Hello there, very good morning, good to see you. 6 o'clock, Wednesday the 5th of June. This is breakfast, rather unusually, with me here in London and Isabel Webster in Portsmouth. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning, that's right. I'm in Portsmouth today as royals and dignitaries arrive at the national commemorative event. His Majesty the King, the Queen and the Prince of Wales will be joined by the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition.
Well, today the Commonwealth stands together to remember those who fought for our freedom 80 years ago on D-Day. Normandy prepares to honour its legacy as the American President Joe Biden flies into France. Political punches exchanged. Rishi Sunak fights back as he accuses Keir Starmer of wanting to raise the tax burden by £2,000 per household in their first general election head-to-head.
And in the sport this morning, with 115 charges facing them in November, Manchester City have got on the attack and launched legal action against the Premier League over what they call unlawful financial rules. The Lionesses beat France to give them more of a chance to defend their Euros title in Switzerland next year. And in the tennis, after Novak Djokovic pulled out of the French Open, there's a new world #1.
Feeling on the chilly side in the wind today, with frequent showers in some parts of the UK. But not everyone will be affected by these showers. Some places will have a mostly fine day. Find out all the details in the forecast coming up soon.
Well, this will be a very special day. The nation is coming together and Portsmouth is the venue for a lot of events to honour troops who crossed the Channel 80 years ago as they headed into the battle of a lifetime. Isabel is in Portsmouth where all the action is taking place. Tell us what's going on, Isabel.
I will do. Thank you very much, Eamonn, and welcome to everybody at home to Portsmouth this morning, the historic city, which of course every day remembers D-Day. As soon as you arrive in the city, you see all the signs to the D-Day Museum. It is etched into their history, but today it is the focus of the national commemorations. You can see the stage is set behind me for the 80th commemorations, and military bands expected to perform, and we're expecting 2 World War II Dakota aircrafts to fly past, as well as the Red Arrows putting in a display for us. We're also expecting His Royal Highness, His Majesty the King and the Queen to be here a little bit later on this morning, as well as the Prince of Wales, and fresh from their TV debate last night, which was a little bit touchy, and I'm sure Eamonn will tell you more about that a little bit later on. We will be seeing the Prime Minister and Sir Keir Starmer here as well. But actually, of course, at the heart of all of this is the veterans, 80 years on, so many of them in their late teens and early 20s when they had to risk their lives, and many of them paying the ultimate price. Some of those survivors will still be here today. Those who tragically fell will, of course, be remembered. But we are on Southsea Common. The sun has risen. It's a beautiful morning here in Portsmouth. We're right next to the Naval Memorial. It couldn't be a more fitting place to remember what happened, because actually the 5th of June was supposed to be D-Day, and the Allied Command Centre that was set up here in Southwark House in the north of the city is where General Eisenhower took that decision. The weather was not quite right. It was not optimal for what was to prove to be the biggest seaborne invasion in history. He delayed it just 24 hours, and we know that it went on to be a huge success. But on day one, 80,000 British troops crossed the Channel, 155,000 Allied troops in total, 11,000 aircraft and 6,900 naval vessels. It was unbelievable. And of course, we've got people for us today throughout the day across the sea in northern France. But here in Portsmouth, we'll be focusing on all of the important factors, the fact that liberty was saved and that we have so much to be grateful for. And of course, the royals playing a key part in that. So who better to speak to this morning than Cameron Walker, who joins me here. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning, Isabel.
We've been researching a little bit about exactly what the royals themselves did, because they were very involved in the war effort back in 1939 to 1945. Tell us about their own own personal role in helping D-Day be a successful mission.
Yeah, and we have to remember, of course, it was King Charles's grandfather, George VI, who was the monarch during World War II, and he, the late Queen, when she was Princess Elizabeth, and indeed the Queen Mother as well, were all involved in this art of deception, trying to distract the Nazis away from the Normandy beaches, where, of course, the Allied invasion took place, to try and trick them into thinking the invasion was going to happen somewhere else. So the King, for example, went to the southeast of England to greet troops, trying to trick the Nazis into thinking the invasion was going to happen in Calais. He was also sent up to the Orkney Islands, again a deception tactic to try and convince the Nazis that they were going to invade Scandinavia instead. So the royal family were very much at the heart of D-Day, but as well as the troops as well.
Well, Hitler fell for it, didn't he? He ended up diverting a huge number of his troops up into Scandinavia as a result of the Orkney deception. So we'll be remembering their role. And of course, His Majesty the King was just 4 when he lost his own grandfather, so he won't have been able to have heard those testimonies first-hand, really. But his mother, the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth II, also very involved. And they've been remembering over the years all of these commemorative events. And tell us a little bit about what they've been doing for this special one.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, of course, the King was so young when he lost his grandfather. But what the King does have is his grandfather's diaries, particularly of D-Day, and it's been revealed this morning, and we're going to hear more about this as the day goes on. The King has read an extract from King George VI's diary on D-Day. So he said, this is the extract from George VI's diary. The news was given out at 8 a.m. that the invasion of the continent of Europe had started last night. The airborne troops had made successful landings in the night and had captured their objectives. So that was something, and of course D-Day ultimately tips the course of the Second World War in the Allies' favour. The King and the Queen have also met 4 D-Day veterans in Buckingham Palace. We're going to see a full video of that later. Arthur Airborne, who's 100, John Dennett, 99, Bernard Morgan, 100, and Jim Miller as well. He has also just turned 100 last week. He received a birthday card from His Majesty the King. So it's very poignant, I think, and the King was shown artefacts from these D-Day veterans, including a pair of lucky football boots, which one of them carried on his backpack over to France and stormed the beaches of France. One with a dog collar, which still has blood on it from when he was shot, survived. He was shot in the lung. His friend saved him. Unfortunately, his friend Walter, this is Arthur, his friend Walter died the following day in Normandy during that Allied invasion.
Goodness me. And of course we know that the royals have a close affinity with the military anyway, so they will be much supporting all of the events here today. They'll be travelling to Normandy this afternoon and tomorrow, and we know that Princess Anne, of course, always so busy with royal engagement. Yeah. She's got a full diary as well, hasn't she?
She certainly does. Shout out to Princess Anne here. She has a number of engagements today as well as tomorrow. So she is, of course, Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Regina Rifles. She is going to be unveiling a statue of the World War II Canadian Royal Rifleman in Normandy this morning, accompanied by her husband, Vice Admiral Tim Lawrence. She's then going to be going to the Bayeux War Cemetery, joining Normandy veterans there. She's also going to be, as part of her new role as President of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, taken over from the Duke of Kent last year, going to be attending a service there, as well as a vigil tonight, again in Bayeux.
Fantastic. Well, Cameron, thanks very much indeed. We'll be with you all morning, and I look forward to hearing much more from you a little bit later on. Portsmouth, of course, has seen lots of events over the last few days. We saw on GB News Breakfast yesterday morning live a number of veterans making their way across the Channel, and have had full coverage of them as they've made that momentous trip back to where they risked everything for our freedom. Well, we're joined this morning by Sophie Reaper, who is in Normandy for us and can bring us up to date on what will be happening there this morning. And of course, she's been giving us full coverage of all of that. An operation, the sheer scale of D-Day, needed to be planned, of course, at a discreet location. The Scottish seaside town of Largs made for an ideal base, and our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire, paid a visit to Largs. Let's take a listen to his story first of all.
To the untrained eye, the seaside town of Largs on the west coast of Scotland would look the same today as it did in 1944. But back during the Second World War, this coastal paradise held a secret, for it was home to the headquarters of the Combined Operations planning D-Day. George Newlands, a volunteer at the local Largs Museum, talks about the buildings at the heart of Scotland's best-kept wartime secret.
Van Duara was taken over and became the Combined Operations headquarters for the duration of the war. And then a conference of about 110 military personnel took place in the Hollywood Hotel, as was then. It's little known, but that conference was one of the most important pre-planning things for the whole operation.
The Vandewaara guest house was owned at the time by the Derby family, and although Mrs Derby moved out, Mr Derby stayed on, his efforts rewarded with the rank of Chief Petty Officer. Flats now stand at the site of the Hollywood Hotel, the location of the critical Field of Cloth and Gold conference. Only the name remains, signalling history was made here. One thing that won't have changed in 80 years is Largs Promenade being a popular site for a stroll. So how much do today's locals know about the history made on their doorstep?
Where do you think that would have been planned?
Here maybe?
Yeah, it is well done. I think that's quite cool that it happened in a wee Scottish town like this.
Yeah.
London.
It was that building right behind me over the corner.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Hollywood House. It's gone now, it's been replaced by flats, but there were meetings here in Largs.
I wouldn't have known that, no. I've lived here all my life and I wouldn't have known that.
Long-time Largs resident Gordon Scott says younger generations are beginning to take a keen interest in the approaching anniversary.
The younger generations are much more interested than maybe my generation was. Again, it was more recent to my generation, so my parents, my father, were trying to forget it. They didn't talk about the war, but as the time has gone on, you know, we've looked back and we've realised the tragedy of it all.
In truth, history was made all across Scotland. The Sheriffmuir Atlantic Wall was used to practice breaching techniques. Oban was a testing ground for the Mulberry Harbours. Chaff was tested for the first time at Tantallon Castle in North Berwick. And even Largs has more stories to tell.
HMS Largs was the command ship for all the landings that took place in Sword Beach in June 1944. So she was quite an important little ship.
Two of Scotland's surviving D-Day veterans passed the torch to the younger generation this week. But by the next landmark anniversary, it will most certainly fall on the shoulders of youth to champion their story, their courage and their sacrifice. Tony Maguire, GB News.
It's funny, I travelled down to Portsmouth last night and I was just imagining as I was going to sleep how those soldiers must have felt. Many of them in tented camps dotted along the southern coast here. They weren't actually told when D-Day came that this was the real thing. Many of them suspected, but they were told that they needed to be ready and there was of course a lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness. My own grandfather was among those, spent the night here somewhere along the coast. I don't even know where. He was with the Canadians and of course there were troops from all over the Commonwealth, from Canada and America, from Czechoslovakia and Croatia and Greece. Those troops all together. My grandfather was with the Canadians and he made his way on D-Day +1 to Sword Beach. But the fear that they must have felt, my own grandfather having survived the catastrophic Dieppe raids 2 years earlier where there were so many lives lost. They weren't to know that this would be more successful. Of course, we know now through the lens of history what an absolutely pivotal moment this was in winning the war. But I can't help but sort of capture some of that atmosphere standing here in Portsmouth this morning, Eamonn.
5,000 ships, 160,000 troops, 73,000 of those troops were American and the rest of them, another 85,000 or so, made up of the mix that you were talking about there, the majority of those being British as well. I'm just looking at events planned for Portsmouth today, and goodness me, it goes on quite late, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's happening this morning until about 2 o'clock this afternoon, a good few hours of commemorations, and we're expecting lots of school children to be attending as well, which I think is really important for this event. They want to make sure that the next generation get that message, that they remember the fallen. It's so distant, I suppose, for youngsters today to really sort of grasp and understand what it was for those people who lived through it. And so many of the veterans that we've been speaking to this week on GB News, and I think again of my own personal experience, their family never really talked about it. It was such a stiff upper lip culture back then, but of course, my goodness me, so important to hear those stories, and they will be told on the stage this afternoon. But there will not just be sort of poignant reflections, but there will be celebrations. I was talking about last night, Eamonn, a moment ago, there was also music blaring out, Vera Lynn singing "We'll Meet Again, Don't Know Where," don't know when. A bit of a party atmosphere as well, because of course we know how it all ended. It was a big success.
Yeah, there's going to be more music today. Tom Jones, the centre of attention. Any idea who the lineup is?
No, we've just been told musical performances, acts and readings done by famous faces old and new. So you know more than me if Tom Jones is making an appearance. That sounds fantastic.
And the King and Queen, I mean, they're on stage there until 11:15 tonight.
I don't know if that's the case, but I'll take your word for it, Eamonn. I believe it's a busy event, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Letters and testimonies by people commemorating in the cemetery will be read, and before all graves are lit up when the sun has gone down. The sun goes down at 11:15, and the King and Queen will still be on stage there. Isabel, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. We'll be talking to you throughout the morning, bringing us a flavour of what is going on and what has been planned at Portsmouth. The Prime Minister and the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, faced off in last night's first TV debate of the general election. Going head-to-head, Rishi Sunak accused Sir Keir Starmer of settling his eyes on raiding pension pots and hiking taxes. The cost of living also came up, as did the NHS, which Sir Keir said is broken. Let's take a look back at what was said.
Keir Starmer said, smash the gangs. We put new laws in Parliament that have now led to almost 1,000 criminals and people smugglers being arrested, serving hundreds of years in jail. Because we do need to smash the gangs. Keir Starmer voted against those laws. So as ever, you say one thing here, but your track record says something completely different, and you can't be trusted to tackle immigration.
But I don't want to put a ceiling on our ambition, so let the whole lot go.
The waiting lists are coming down. But what Keir Starmer didn't mention to you, which you did, Julie.
Waiting list 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. He says they're coming down, and this is the guy who says he's good at maths.
Yeah, they are now coming down. They are now coming down.
7.2 when you said you get them down. 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. I'd like you to explain how they're coming down. We will get rid of the tax break on private schools to pay for it. That's a tough choice. I do understand that. It's a tough choice.
We will, on July the 4th, win this seat. I'm humbled to be here. I'm flattered by your reception, and I promise I will do my best.
No, this is important. Mark my words. Labour will raise your taxes. It's in their DNA. Your work, your car, your pension.
Thank you. OK,
you name it,
sorry,
Labour will tax it.
I'm just going to just draw breath there a moment.
And we'll draw breath here in the studio. This is political commentator John Oxley, hi, John, who watched all of that last night. And I think it doesn't really matter about the detail that was said. The thing is image, projection, who dominated the screen, if anybody?
You're really right. I think one of the things, Rishi Sunak looked a bit more tetchy. He was more aggressive. He was a bit more domineering, in particular, really quite often going over his time limits and scrapping with the moderators. Sometimes people will interpret that as passion. Others might see it as a bit angry. I think Keir Starmer connected really well with the audience members who asked the question. The first question came from someone who was really themselves struggling with the cost of living crisis. And I think at that attempt to do the humanity of politics, Starmer probably had the edge, and that will certainly help him with some voters as well.
Yeah. Now, what about the key points that emerged? I mean, you mentioned there migration, tax, NHS. What did they make as the talking points?
Rishi Sunak was very clear to make this idea of Labour tax rises. He kept dropping this figure of £2,000. Keir Starmer was a bit weak in pushing that back. As well, Sunak was really going for this idea that he's the man with the plan and Starmer isn't, really challenging the Labour leader about what he'd do, particularly in regards to illegal migration, what he'd do about the doctors' strike, whereas Starmer, was, as we saw in the clip, was really pushing against the Conservatives' record in government, sort of saying what is going on with the NHS, what is going on with education, how have we reached this point when there's so many problems, and if you're the man to fix it, why haven't you or your party fixed it already? And really leaning into this idea that it's 14 years wasted by the Conservatives.
Did you see this as a scrap or a debate? Was it ill-tempered?
It was. There was you can sense there was passion there, maybe a bit of bad blood between the two leaders. It wasn't, as cheery as some of the debates we've seen in the past on this platform.
So Sunak attacking, Starmer on the defensive, but you thought, all in all, more prime ministerial almost.
I think that's right. I think Starmer seemed a little bit more in control of himself, building up to this idea that he's the man on the moment. Sunak looked like the challenger, which is really where the polls put him. Starmer is growing in confidence in the role, and I think that will have come across to many viewers as well.
Well, the void in the polls, the popularity polls that we're getting, 20-plus points adrift are the Conservatives on this. So if you were Sunak, would you have advised him to do anything differently than he did last night?
I think he could have probably stuck to his time a bit better, speaking over people, scrapping with the moderator, Julie Etchingham, who's very well respected, isn't the best look. I think if he'd been a bit more controlled, he'd have come across more professional. But apart from that, in terms of the content of what he was saying, he hit all the lines he needed to take. The question is, does it make any difference? 5 years ago, in the same debate, the audience said that Jeremy Corbyn came out slightly ahead. 4 weeks later, when we had the election, he was a long way behind.
Yeah. So basically, it's Starmer's to lose.
Yeah.
Therefore, his tactics would have been what during the debate last night?
Don't make any mistakes. Don't give the Conservatives any ammunition. Look as good as you can, but really don't take any risks, because in a debate like that, if you're the person in front, you're the one with everything to lose and not a huge amount to gain. And you basically thought he achieved that? Pretty much. I mean, I think Sunak maybe came out slightly better of the two, but the best way I can describe it is, in football terms, it's like winning a throw-in when you're already 4-0 down. It's better than not doing it, but it's not going to change the outcome. OK. Now, look, we just want to say, that's John's view on what he saw from a political analysis point of view, but you can get in touch with us if you watched it last night and you had a view on all of this. Get in touch with us the usual way on the programme, and that is gbnews.com/your say, and we'll be very interested in reflecting what your say actually was. John Oxley, thank you very much indeed. So here we are. We've got D-Day, we've got the political debates going on at the moment as well. But the big thing that everyone is talking about is our official new summer giveaway. Here's how it could be yours.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Absolutely. Good luck to you if you're having a go at that. The weather situation, I don't know about you, but good luck, give up. It's unbelievable. 1 minute you think, oh, a bit of blue sky, then the rain comes down. Aidan McGivern, what's going to happen today?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office. Cool winds for many of us today, along with showers. Although the showers won't affect everyone, it's going to be mostly fine in the south. Certainly we start off with some early sunshine across East Anglia, south and southeast England. The cloud will build through the morning, and by the afternoon most places are rather cloudy, although there will be some brighter spells coming through at times. It's not going to feel particularly warm because we've got this cool and blustery northwesterly breeze, most notable across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. That's where the bulk of the showers will be moving in. Some of these showers will be lively with perhaps some hail and thunder in the far northwest, where it's going to be just 11 or 12 Celsius. In the south, mid to high teens, and where we get some sunshine and shelter from the winds, pleasant enough, but not particularly pleasant across Scotland. Those showers will be moving in swiftly through the day, cold enough for some snow to be falling from those showers above around 600 metres for the Scottish mountains. Now, for Northern Ireland, the showers will be on and off through the day, interspersed by brighter spells, some heavy rain appearing for Cumbria and Lancashire at times. But for parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, fewer showers, a greater chance that we end the day with some blue skies, and we keep those clear skies into the evening and overnight. As a result, it's going to be a chilly night in many places. Temperatures dipping into the mid to low single figures, but there'll still be some showers. There'll still be a gusty wind coming through across northwestern parts of the country, and that will continue to drive showers into the northwest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales. First thing Thursday. Thursday is a similar day to Wednesday, so if you've got the frequent showers on Wednesday, expect more of the same on Thursday. Likewise, if you've got mostly dry, fine conditions on Wednesday, similar on Thursday. Wouldn't rule out the odd shower in the south, but that's where the best of the sunshine and the highest temperatures will be 16 to 17 Celsius, mid to low teens further north.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
On this special edition of GB Breakfast this morning, we will be crossing to Normandy next. Our reporter Sophie Reaper is there on the beaches, one of the beaches which the troops landed on D-Day. And D-Day will be 80 years on tomorrow, June the 6th. OK, this is Breakfast on GB News. Eamonn Holmes in London, Isabel Webster in Portsmouth. Back after this.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back to our very special edition of Breakfast this morning. I'm in Portsmouth, and we're, of course, right across Normandy as well for you in the coverage on the channel of D-Day, I should say, 80. Of course, this is a very special anniversary. We're looking back on exactly what happened all those years ago, and focusing on particular the 5 beaches in Normandy that were chosen for tactical reasons. Juno, Gold, Omaha, Sword and Utah. And I can cross now to gold and speak to Sophie Reaper, also known as Eamonn. Sophie, you've been covering this now for a number of days and soaking up not only the atmosphere, there have been lots of celebrations going on, lots of veterans, lots of relatives there, but also reflecting on, I suppose, the logistics of what happened there. Those beaches chosen for tactical reasons because they could support the weight of the artillery and all of the landings that were required for this invasion. But just give us a sense of what it has been like over the last few days and where you are.
Well, Isabel, this morning has actually been really rather different to the previous mornings we've done on these beaches. Over the past few days, we've had glorious sunshine, blue skies. The channel here behind me on Gold Beach has been really rather still. However, this morning we've woken up to a bit of rain. The skies are much darker, the channel is much choppier, and I think that just makes it feel all the more poignant because it gives a much better sense of what those men on the beaches would have been experiencing 80 years ago tomorrow. Of course, we know President Eisenhower made the decision to delay D-Day by 24 hours after consulting with meteorologists. Of course, it was supposed to take place on the 5th of June, but it was moved to the 6th of June because of those adverse weather conditions. And as I say, it's just incredibly moving to be able to be here on these beaches in the build-up to this incredibly special anniversary, the 80th anniversary. Of course, in the build-up to this, we've been speaking to our veterans, those incredible men who risked it all for our freedom. I had the opportunity to sit down with one of those veterans, Albert Keir, last week to hear his story, and this is what he had to tell me.
On D-Day, I was sure I was going to get home. I made sure I was going to get home.
On the 6th of June 1944, a then 18-year-old Albert Keir played his part in D-Day. 80 years later, and he still remembers how he felt at the time.
We did feel a bit scared at that time and different things. Everything goes through your mind when you're in danger. We were coming in and out of the ports. I was in the Navy, of course. I was going out serving the sea for anything like bombs underneath the water. We used to have to search for them and then drop depth charges to blow them up.
D-Day marked the beginning of the end for World War II, which for many troops like Albert would mean they would finally be able to return home.
We went back home and we were very happy to get back home. Of course, you never know when you go to sea if you're ever going to get back again. I felt marvellous and safe when I got back into England. I've always been quite happy ever since I got back. I've never been sad or anything like that since I got back.
8 decades later, and Albert is still proud of what he accomplished on D-Day. But like so many veterans, he is remarkably humble.
There were so many of us, so many in the Navy, and they're doing the same job as you. So how could you be a hero over all these others? You couldn't. I feel happy that we won the war and that we beat the Germans and we got them out of France.
Sophie Reaper, GB News. Whenever I speak to veterans like Albert, I always find it incredibly emotive, and I always ask them one question in particular, and that's if they feel like a hero after the sacrifices they made on D-Day. And just like Albert, every single one of them always tells me that they don't feel like a hero, that that was just what they felt they had to do, and that the real heroes are those who gave their lives and lost their lives here along the Normandy coastline 80 years ago tomorrow.
Yeah, Sophie, they were heroes, though, of course they were. And gosh, it gives me goosebumps hearing all of these first-hand testimonies. And not to put too fine a point on it, but we won't be hearing too many of these testimonies for too many years to come. They are so precious. But he was right, Albert, of course. 10,000 troops dead, lost or missing on day one alone. The human toll was absolutely catastrophic. And where Sophie is in northern France. The Princess Royal will be visiting a cemetery there to pay tribute to the fallen. And of course, it was very difficult for all of their families back over here waiting for months for news. We mustn't forget, of course, all of those who were left behind. Those men, so young. A lot of them we've been hearing over the last few days as well, enlisting before they were really legally allowed to, under the age of 18. So keen were they, such heroes, that they wanted to play their part in D-Day. We're going to have lots more coverage from here throughout the morning for you on a very special programme. But for now, back to you, Eamonn, in the studio.
Yes, and I'm joined now in the studio by a man who was on Gold Beach on the day at Arromanches, Paul Coit, who was there as part of the invasion force.
Can you, I'm looking quite well on it, aren't I? You know what? We were talking about...
You've aged well.
Well, I've tried my best when we were talking about The Longest Day.
Yes.
And
The film, The
Longest Day was about D-Day, because there was controversy around that, because you know that the Canadians were pretty much ignored in The Longest Day.
And there was a lot of Canadians.
Yeah, and especially Juno Beach, which was very much led by the Canadians, who was extremely successful in that situation, but never really got a mention. So I know we're probably, 62 years since The Longest Day movie, but now it's time to put the record straight.
But you see, you had to have Kenneth Moore in there and Richard Todd and all these great British actors. And
there weren't enough Canadian actors. Maybe that's the
your
reason.
problem. Hey, on this subject, from a sporting perspective, you've got a link later on today about D-Day. Tell us more.
Well, I was thinking about this yesterday, and you think of the amount of sports, especially when you look of today, the amount of famous footballers and great sports stars. What would happen to them if war had broken out? Would they be then conscripted? They'd be expected to join the army? The answer is, of course, yes. So there were a huge amount of footballers who were very well known.
I remember Elvis was conscripted into the army.
He played for Blackburn Rovers, didn't he, at the time? Elvis, I remember him. But you're right. But that's Elvis. I mean, that's
during the Second World War, there were people like James Stewart, who were most film stars, with the notable exception of John Wayne, who didn't.
Interestingly, David Niven, who was part of the original SAS. I don't know whether you knew that.
Didn't know that.
Is that he actually got a lot of trouble because he was a soldier before he was a film star, so he wanted to join up. Whereas a lot of the army at the time and the government are saying, well, we need you to make these films. No, I say propaganda, but it's all good for the war effort. But he said, no, I want to fight. It's something I want to do. So when he flew over, there was a front page of the newspaper that was saying, you know, oh, Niven comes over to save us, and he was incredibly embarrassed, and because he took a lot of stick for that to say, oh, I see, you're coming over and you're going to try and save us, are you? But it was very important to him, and it was another one that never spoke too much about what he did in the war, but he had a very huge role in it.
Now, listen, mate, there's a bit of a war in the Premier League. Manchester City against the Premier League.
Oh, my goodness me.
Civil war, really.
It really is, yeah.
So how serious is this? What is going on? They've been accused of spending misdemeanours, right? And they're now saying, oh no, we're not the problem here, the Premier League's the problem.
Right. Now, there's 115 charges that they face, which is in November. Now, those charges, they're saying, is nothing actually to do with what this latest legal action is. So Man City have launched legal action against the Premier League for what they say unlawful financial rules. Now, it's a thing called APT. I'm trying not to... I know it sounds like something which is very painful. It's the Associated Party Transaction Laws, so which basically prevents clubs. So if you've got a very rich club using their companies to sponsor, they might say, you know what, we're going to use our company to sponsor the shirts, which then they pay money into the club, and then they say that that money can be used to spend on players. So that's basically it. It's saying that it's an inside job, whereas Man City are saying, well, that's not fair, it's against the rules, it's against this, it's against that. So they're now taking the Premier League to court. Whether this is a smokescreen over these 115 that are coming up, I don't know. But
it's whenever this resolves itself, and whatever way it does, and I get the impression that it mightn't ever resolve itself.
No.
But I mean, it could give Liverpool another 3 titles. It could really strip City off 3 titles.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And you look at clubs like Newcastle, will probably be sitting in the background thinking, yeah, go Man City, because if that means that we can sponsor our own club by using companies associated with the owners, then we can spend as much money as we want, because with profit and sustainability at the moment, they're not allowed to do that. So it is a huge thing that they're trying to do. And also they're saying that there's a discrimination against golf ownership as well. So it's just a mess. It really is.
When you say golf ownership, you mean by Middle Eastern owners?
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
OK, get that. More on this throughout the programme this morning, Paul. We're going to go back to Portsmouth. Isabel's got a guest to talk to there.
Yes, I do. I'm very pleased to introduce you all this morning to the organiser of this event. And I don't think it's an overstatement to say it's almost taken as much involvement and organisation as organising D-Day itself. It's my pleasure to introduce this morning Commander Warren Haynes. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. It's been a few months, this, of planning.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it all kicked off really from last year. And I would say I'm not the sole organiser.
Okay.
One of the many.
One of the many.
One of the many. Yeah.
And tell us about what your role has been, because you're a Navy man. You've seen active service in Afghanistan. We can see you wearing the medals this morning. But the first thing you said to me this morning was that for you today, it's all about the veterans.
Absolutely. First and foremost, it's to make a fitting tribute to them, acknowledging their sacrifice and service for the country, which is awe-inspiring for us all, really, especially those in military service now, in terms of the impact that they provided for the rest of the country.
And I asked if you'd be sitting in the Royal Box. You're going to be far too busy for that today.
Absolutely. No.
What can we expect from this fantastic stage and the way that it's been designed, sort of merging with the clouds? Truly beautiful.
Absolutely. It's an iconic location, one of the principal ports that the invasion left from, including Plymouth, our other sister port. And in terms of the broadcast itself today, it'll be absolutely spectacular and hopefully a fitting tribute to our veterans.
We're going to have Dame Helen Mirren here on stage leading things, hearing stories and testimonies from the veterans themselves. I believe 79-piece orchestra, 25-strong choir, Royal Marine drummers as well. It's going to be noisy.
And a piper and trumpeters.
Fantastic.
As well.
And tell us a little bit about the flypast to open and close the event.
Yeah, so we've got twin Dakotas following the sad incident with the Battle of Britain Memorial flight. Unfortunately, that's still grounded, but we've got twin Dakotas, one of which was involving in D-Day itself.
Wow.
To start the broadcast. And then later on, weather permitting, and of course it looks good at the moment, will be the Red Arrows with a typhoon.
Fantastic. And interesting you mentioned the weather. We've been talking a lot about it this morning because, of course, D-Day was supposed to be today, wasn't it? And it was delayed at the 11th hour because of bad weather, inclement weather. There's a light show this evening focusing on exactly that, those sea conditions that, well, not just the boats had to endure, but the aircraft as well that were involved in this invasion. What can we expect from the light show tonight?
So it's a tribute to the fallen, and it's a transition to events in France that are taking place tomorrow. So it's a sombre sort of reflective vigil this evening. But in terms of the drone show itself, I'm told it will be spectacular. I think the organisers kept themselves under wraps in terms of the actual content. But I think it'll be very moving and set the scene for the transition to France.
Well, Commander Warren Haynes, thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for talking to us this morning. It's been a privilege. And with that, I hand back to you in Paddington, Eamonn.
Thank you, Isabel. We will take a break. Back with the top stories in the papers right after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Durham on the A19, the northbound entry slip roads closed for emergency repairs at the Norton Interchange at Stockton-on-Tees. In Leicestershire, the A42 is closed southbound from junction 13, Ashby-de-la-Zouch, to the M42 for an investigation. On the A1M in Hertfordshire, there's a lane closed northbound again today for emergency barrier repairs from junction 6 and 7 near Welling. It's expected to cause delays as we head further in towards the morning rush. In London, the A5 Edgware Road is blocked each way for an investigation north of the Maryland flyover at Paddington. Also in London, Eastfields Road in Mitcham's closed northbound. There's burst water main by Mitcham Eastfields Station. And on the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues heading on to the M25 again this morning. And that is because of lane closures for roadworks. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here we are on this Wednesday morning, joining us to go through what's making the news today. Medical doctor Rennie Honderkamp and former Liberal Democrat MP Norman Baker. Very good to see you both. We've got to talk about the debate last night, and it's interesting who you would look and say they emerged as a winner. Did anybody emerge as a winner to you?
So, surprisingly, I thought Sunak did actually very well, much better than I expected him to. And I think that was probably in contrast to a Starmer that didn't do so well, because Starmer just didn't say anything about the future. And whilst I accept that we've had 14 years of the Tories, we still need to know what's going to happen in the future.
But his tactic is, don't say too much and therefore don't make a mistake.
Of course. I mean, he's got this Ming Va strategy, Starmer, of trying to get across this dance floor, this glazed dance floor, carrying a Ming vase without dropping it before the election. That's what he's actually said himself. But, you know, it's a very odd debate, because Sunak was determined not to talk about the 14 years of the Tory government, which has been a disaster. The last 9, I might say. The first 5 were all right in coalition. And Starmer didn't want to talk about the future because he hasn't got a particular plan to talk about the future. So there was this odd kind of non-meeting of minds about what they were actually talking about. The other thing is to say is that when you come to vote in your constituencies, you're voting for an individual MP, which may be a Conservative, maybe a Labour, might be a Lib Dem or SNP or anything else. And that's important to people because the person who represents you is important. And there are more than 2 parties. So in a sense, it's a slightly odd arrangement to have a debate between Sunak and Starmer and present that. I'm not saying they shouldn't debate, but to present it as it was presented as kind of the only thing, the bilateral arrangement for the country. Yeah. You're not actually voting for a Prime Minister, you're voting for a party and for a constituency MP.
But to be fair, Norman, with the voting system that we have, there is only a bilateral choice for the country. We all know that. Everybody knows that.
Would you advocate a change?
I absolutely would advocate it. And yet I voted against it when we had the choice. Because I thought it was a bit of a hodgepodge.
I find the older I am getting, the more I realise nothing is ever achieved of any significance with the system that we've got.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what people know, and that's why it's so depressing.
Yeah, and actually it's not quite as simple as that, because you've got a situation where we did have a hung parliament and a coalition between 2010 and 2015. And personally, I'm not just saying this because I'm a Lib Dem, but actually I thought that was the best government in the last 14 years.
I don't think
it was
stable.
It lasted 5 years. It was competent. And when you wanted to do something as a Lib Dem, you'd go to the Tories and say, what do you think about this? And vice versa, they came to us. And you actually had discussed something with people outside your ranks. And that was a much better way of progressing politics. So this idea of kind of all winner takes all is not right. Do you know, there's going to be no government since the war that's had a majority of people voting for it. None.
No.
They all have 30%, 35% people voting, and they claim a majority.
I think it's very easy for people to say, oh, you know, proportional representation, look what happens in other countries that have it. We are one of only 2 democracies in the world that have this first-past-the-post system. Everyone else manages with some form of PR. And yes, it does mean it's more difficult to form a government, but at least the people get a choice.
They get a choice and they get a voice. I mean, we've had it in Northern Ireland as well. And I don't remember any huge uproar about it. People saying, this is awful, this is undemocratic, this doesn't work.
And they have it in the Scottish Parliament. And actually, the Scottish Parliament, for better or for worse, has run quite well in the last 25 years.
Should Scotland have been represented in that debate last night?
Well, this is the other thing, of course. It's a very English debate. And north of the border, you have a Scottish National Party, which runs a government up there, who were not there last night in the debate at all. So it's a slightly artificial thing to present it as Starmer versus Sunak.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that, because in Scotland they have their own elections for their parliament, and then they have elections for MPs to sit in the House. You know, if Scotland were there last night, then every other party should have been there, because they're no stronger in the Houses of Parliament than any other party.
Well, they are, actually, because you've got the third party at the moment in Parliament.
But they have their own parliament where they vote for that. They have a separate election.
But the election coming up is a general election.
Agreed.
Not a Scottish Parliament election.
Yeah, so it affects Northern Ireland and it affects Wales as well. So you could argue that you could have had 4 people there, 4 leaders.
I think I'm not against Starmer and Sunak debating, but I think there's a need to do something wider than that to enable them to be challenged by other parties.
OK. Now, challenging and protesting. Nigel Farage yesterday and this banana milkshake. I mean, this girl was quite cocky. She didn't seem to think there would be any consequence to what she did. I don't think you have to be a supporter or an enemy of Nigel Farage to look at this and be quite shocked that this happened.
I think, actually, on the very basic level, it's discourteous, as much as anything else, to treat people in that way. And whatever you think about people's political views, they should command a decency and respect, which wasn't shown by that person throwing a milkshake. The one thing I would say is, in this country, I suppose, we throw milkshakes rather than firing bullets.
No,
it could have been acid. Could have been anything.
Could have been acid.
Firstly, I think it's much more than discourteous, and I hope that she actually gets the full force of the law against her. I think younger people in this country have forgotten what democracy means, and I know that these things have gone on forever with John Prescott and the egg, and this has happened to Nigel before. But more and more now, we are seeing politicians threatened. We had a politician last week who had faeces put through their front door. You know, people have forgotten what democracy is, and it is actually hearing ideas that you don't like and listening quietly. We need to get back to a point where debate is allowed and people are allowed to say things that you might find offensive.
Well, no, I agree with that point, but I think there's also a feeling in the population at large that politics in general has let people down over the last 20, 30 years, and people have no confidence. Some people have no confidence in the system at all. They look at MPs' expenses, they look at other things, like they look at the fact that people make promises they aren't kept, and they think this lot, you know, are in for themselves. Now, I don't share that view. I think a lot of politicians are very well-intentioned, but that's a common view among the population at large. And it's also the fact that people now feel they can insult MPs, particularly in a way they can't insult anybody else in the country anymore. That, you know, MPs are the last vestige of people you can insult.
I think as much bravado as Nigel has shown after this, I think it's absolutely terrifying. He must have been terrified at the point, wondering what it was that was hitting his face.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen what happens on the streets of London.
Indeed. I was in the Commons when someone threw some powder at Tony Blair from the public gallery. I was sitting opposite him. And I have to say, apart from anything else, it was an extraordinarily good hit because in terms of just the mechanics of getting it onto his shoulder. But, I mean, you know, the House of Commons had emptied. That was completely the wrong thing to do, because if that had been a particularly dangerous substance, the last thing you do is evacuate the chamber and spread it.
Well, your views, get in touch. Anything you want to talk about, let us know this morning. If you work in an office, there's a certain jargon associated with business now. As journalists, I mean, you know, people like me, we sit here and you try and explain and you try and write in plain language. And there is, in journalism as well, we're supplied by news agencies and they write complete jargon. It's written for American audiences and whatever. And they'll name days like, you know, on Tuesday instead of saying yesterday. And I noticed this other thing that so say it's, here we are in June. What are we, June now? Yeah. So they'll do last month, when it was last week we're talking about, you know, and just things become overly complicated, but that's not the jargon we're talking about. What are we talking about here, Rennie, this sort of jargon in offices?
So we're talking about things like touch base, blue sky thinking, push the envelope, synergise. I'm not sure that that's actually jargon, it actually has a meaning. But I think people are saying that they fear they're missing out on promotions by not understanding. That I find really weird, because I think that if you're that desperate to be promoted, you'll go to, you know, every length to find out what these things mean. But I can understand wanting to just get back to normal English language, because as I have worked in industry over the years, these things started coming in. Mine was push the envelope. I hated that. Push the envelope. I mean, why? Why not just say, let's see what we can achieve?
All right.
Yeah, let's see how far we can, you know, push this idea and what we can achieve.
You see, there in my world, I have never used the term push the envelope, and I didn't really know what it meant there. Yeah.
It's not just offices, of course, it's sport. I mean, a game of two halves, sick as a parrot, all these things that Paul will tell you about from football.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just lazy cliches that someone comes up with and then they get repeated ad infinitum. My hate cliche is the elephant in the room. I hate people.
Oh, I quite like that.
Because there's elephants everywhere, apparently.
But nobody can see them.
Yeah. Well, I presented a quiz show once, and it was completely flawed, because you had to give an answer, and someone would say, name something that you had in your classroom at school. You see, and you know, this would go on for 40 or so answers, and then someone would say an elephant. Ah, wrong. And this person objected, and this person said, but we did have an elephant. We were in India, I was taught in India, and there was an elephant in the classroom, and da-da-da-da. So that actually wasn't wrong. And then they had to get the adjudicators to rule on all of this and decide that this was right and this was allowed.
I can tell you that my 5-year-old has a farm coming to her school today.
A farm?
And she's going to have horses and rabbits and cows at the school.
Oh, I think an interaction with animals, absolutely amazing, and to understand. And one day, I think we'll all be Dr. Doolittles. We'll all be able to talk to the animals. But I'll be talking to you two again in 40 minutes' time, and they'll be back. And right now we go and we get a weather update. Aidan McGiver.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office. Cool winds for many of us today, along with showers. Although the showers won't affect everyone, it's going to be mostly fine in the south. Certainly we start off with some early sunshine across East Anglia, South and South East England. The cloud will build through the morning, and by the afternoon most places are rather cloudy, although there will be some brighter spells coming through at times. It's not going to feel particularly warm because we've got this cool and blustery northwesterly breeze, most notable across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. That's where the bulk of the showers will be moving in. Some of these showers will be lively with perhaps some hail and thunder in the far northwest, where it's going to be just 11 or 12 Celsius. In the south, mid to high teens, and where we get some sunshine and shelter from the winds, pleasant enough, but not particularly pleasant across Scotland. Those showers will be moving in swiftly through the day. Cold enough for some snow to be falling from those showers above around 600 metres for these Scottish mountains. Now for Northern Ireland, the showers will be on and off through the day, interspersed by brighter spells, some heavy rain appearing for Cumbria and Lancashire at times. But for parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, fewer showers, a greater chance that we end the day with some blue skies, and we keep those clear skies into the evening and overnight. As a result, it's going to be a chilly night in many places. Temperatures dipping into the mid to low single figures, but there'll still be some showers. There'll still be a gusty wind coming through across northwestern parts of the country, and that will continue to drive showers into the northwest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales. First thing Thursday. Thursday is a similar day to Wednesday, so if you've got the frequent showers on Wednesday, expect more of the same on Thursday. Likewise, if you've got mostly dry, fine conditions on Wednesday, similar on Thursday. Wouldn't rule out the odd shower in the south, but that's where the best of the sunshine and the highest temperatures will be 16 to 17 Celsius, mid to low teens further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M1 in Derbyshire is blocked southbound for an investigation between junctions 28 and 27 from Alfreton to the Hutton and Underwood turn, causing delays. In Leicestershire, the A42 is closed southbound for an investigation from junction 13 at Ashby-de-la-Zouch, and the M42 in Herefordshire, the A49 is closed each way between the A417 at Hope under Dinmore and the A44 at Leominster, where overnight roadworks have overrun. There are delays of up to 3/4 of an hour. Some cancelled trains on the West Coast Main Line between Watford Junction and Euston Station in London because of an incident. In London, the A5 Edgware Road is blocked for an investigation north of the A404 Marylebone flyover in Paddington, causing delays. And train services in West Sussex have been stopped between Worthing and Amoring, and that's thanks to a trespasser. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hello there, good to see you. It is 7 o'clock Wednesday, the 5th of June, and you're tuned in to Breakfast, a special breakfast programme here on GB News with Eamonn Holmes in London and Isabel Webster in Portsmouth.
That's right, I'm in Portsmouth this morning as royals and dignitaries are arriving here for the national commemorative event. His Majesty the King, the Queen and the Prince of Wales will be here along with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. I'll have more for you from here throughout the morning.
And here's what we're covering. Normandy prepares to honour its legacy as the American President Joe Biden flies into France. GB News reporter Sophie Reaper is there at the heart of what's going on. Sophie.
We're here on Gold Beach in Arromanches, where 80 years ago tomorrow, British troops would have landed right here on this beach.
Political punches exchanged. Rishi Sunak fights back as he accuses Keir Starmer of wanting to raise the tax burden by £2,000 per household in the first general election head-to-head.
And in the sport this morning, with 115 charges facing them in November, Manchester City have gone on the attack and launched legal action against the Premier League over what they call unlawful financial rules. Now, after losing to them on Friday, the Lionesses beat France in St Etienne to give them more of a chance to defend their Euros title, which is in Switzerland next year. And in tennis, after Novak Djokovic pulled out of the French Open, there he is on his knees. There's a new world number one.
Feeling on the chilly side in the wind today, with frequent showers in some parts of the UK. But not everyone will be affected by these showers. Some places will have a mostly fine day. Find out all the details in the forecast coming up soon.
A special 2 day of events to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day is underway. That begin in Portsmouth today, and Isabel is there for us this morning. Good morning, Isabel. What's happening?
Good morning, Eamonn. Well, what a beautiful morning it is here in Portsmouth, and we wanted to bring all of you, our GB News viewers and listeners, along to this commemorative event with us here on Southsea Common. We're right next to the Naval Memorial here, and it is a really fitting place to reflect on 80 years since the event that really turned everything in World War II and enabled us to go on and defeat the Nazis. Today here on this fantastic stage behind me, we're going to have Dame Helen Mirren, coordinating events, and she'll be introducing lots of military bands and choirs. We're going to have a fly past from Second World War era Dakota planes. We'll also see the Red Arrows here, and we'll also be joined by dignitaries and royalty. His Royal Highness, His Majesty the King and the Queen will be here, and also the Prince of Wales, of course always closely affiliated with the military, but here to pay tribute to their own role in all of this. And we're also going to be joined by the Prime Minister and Sir Keir Starmer, fresh from their slightly tetchy debate last night. They'll be probably getting a helicopter here, I think, a little bit later on. Eamonn will tell you more about the politics of all of that, but all of the dignitaries joining here as the national focus really in the commemorations. I'm going to talk to our royal correspondent Cameron Walker. First of all, a little bit about the royals. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Isabel.
Of course we'd expect to see the royals here today, very fitting for a big national outpouring of gratitude really, but fascinating to look into the role of the royal family in the success of D-Day.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of history going on here. Of course, it was the King's grandfather, George VI, who was the monarch during World War II, and he was actually quite heavily involved in the deception when it comes to D-Day, trying to distract the Germans away from the Normandy beaches where the Allied invasion took place, to try and trick them into thinking the invasion was going to happen somewhere else. So, for example, the King was sent to the southeast of England to try and trick the Germans into thinking that Calais was going to be where they were going to be landing. He was also sent to the Orkney Islands as well, again trying to trick the Germans into thinking that the invasion was going to happen in Scandinavia instead. And it kind of worked, because a lot of German soldiers were taken away from the Normandy beaches in time for June the 6th, 1944. But the King, of course, is head of the armed forces. It's very poignant for him being here as well. We've seen overnight that he has actually met 4 D-Day veterans in Buckingham Palace, and he served in the Royal Navy himself in the 1970s, commanding a minesweeper HMS Bronington in 1976. And in this video, he was visibly moved, I think, hearing the testimonies of those veterans.
Yeah, well, he was just 4, wasn't he, when his father, who was king throughout the war, passed away. So he was never able to hear, I suppose, those testimonies from his own family. But of course, his mother, as we know, playing her role in all of this, and Queen Elizabeth II was always very keen to support these sorts of events. Tell us a little bit, though, about the role that King George VI wanted to play as leading his men in the war. Because here in Portsmouth, you know, we talk about the Allied Command Centre and General Eisenhower, and we talk a lot about Churchill. Of course, King George VI was chomping at the bit, really, to be involved himself.
Yeah, and of course, in years gone by, it would have been the monarch leading his own troops into battle, but by the time he got to the 1940s, of course, that was clearly no longer the case. It would have been incredibly dangerous for King George VI to lead his troops into battle, and the King has actually revealed overnight that his grandfather, George VI, was incredibly frustrated that he wasn't allowed to be on the boats. It was several days later before he actually arrived in Normandy, post the invasion and post D-Day. But he also revealed, we also know, of course, that King George VI was trying to dissuade Churchill, Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the time, from going on for D-Day as well across to Normandy, saying that the Prime Minister should not go in my place, it's far too dangerous. He had real anxiety that Churchill was going to put himself in harm's way, and ultimately he was successful in persuading Churchill that perhaps it wasn't best for him to be on one of those ships.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice, it sounds like there. Well, thank you very much, Cameron. And I know that we've got the Royal Box just behind us. They will be front and centre, enjoying all of that is on offer today. But I want to talk now to GB News' Homes and Security Editor, Mark White. Good morning to you, Mark. Enjoying the sunshine here. And I just want to reflect, I think, a little bit about Portsmouth and the feeling that there must have been here in this very place and in Plymouth as well 80 years ago, because we know D-Day was supposed to be today, wasn't it?
Yeah, indeed, but it was delayed quite a number of times because of the weather. We had many thousands of people actually on ships and landing craft out in the English Channel along the coast there, some of them keeping busy with doing exercises, but many of them, of course, because of the weather conditions, really quite horribly sick and just waiting for that call to get across. I mean, it is absolutely unimaginable for us, really, to put ourselves in the position that they were in. 7,000 vessels that were involved in this, big and small, among them 1,200 warships, we're told as well. It was a huge operation, of course, for the soldiers that landed on the beaches of Normandy, but a massive maritime operation as well, with, we're told, 195,000 naval personnel, both on the ships and on land, looking after the logistics. And that's before we even mention the role of the RAF, the airborne assaults that took place.
Well, I mean, just the logistics and the military capability and agility and ability to defeat the Nazis is so phenomenally impressive. But I think you're right to focus on that human element and to think about those young, some of them so young. We've been talking this morning, hearing from veterans on GB News as well, who were under the age, the legal age, to sign up, but so desperate to contribute. Imagine being seasick, having slept in a tent, not knowing what your fate was holding. You wouldn't have a phone, you couldn't ring mum for a final chat, and then going and facing artillery fire, you know, machine guns, and then continuing for days and months. Such bravery.
Absolutely. I mean, people lied to do their part in the war. They wanted to go and follow their elder brothers or other mates that had gone off to fight. They wanted to do their bit. And yes, some people were very young that went across. And of course, now we're 80 years on, and very few veterans are surviving. It was 500 veterans the MOD estimated were still alive in the UK at the time of the last major commemoration, the 75th anniversary. Now we're down to fewer than 100, and really this is being seen as probably the last hurrah, the last big commemoration that veterans will really be able to attend, and it has that poignancy, and also has the poignancy and resonance because we're in a position internationally now. We're told we're on a pre-war footing. We see wars raging in Ukraine, in the Middle East, ships coming under attack in the Red Sea, a belligerent
talking
China.
About conscriptions.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's a different time, and it's definitely a time to reflect on our history. I'm going to borrow the microphone from you and bring in a historian. It feels like the right time.
I shall exit.
Okay, you shall exit. Okay. Well, I'm joined by Dr. Joseph Quinn now from the University of Oxford. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. And Mark was really sort of talking about how poignant this particular commemoration is because of the age of the remaining veterans. But you've been involved in an incredible project called The Finest Hour.
Their Finest Hour.
Their Finest Hour, which launches tomorrow on D-Day itself. And it is listening to those testimonies, not only of the veterans, but of their families as well. Tell us all about it.
Yes, well, as has been pointed out, it is really the last hurrah for a lot of our veterans right across the country. By the time we get to the 85th anniversary, most of that generation will pretty much be long gone, which is very sad, but thankfully we do have the stories preserved through their loved ones, through their relatives, and our project, Their Finest Hour, has been about preserving the stories as they have been told to the loved ones of the wartime generation. And so what we did over the course of 2023 and 2024 is we invited people to come to events that we organised known as digital collection days that were held right across the UK in all 4 constituent nations, and in every conceivable part of the UK we could reach. We tried to organise events where people could come, mainly community events, and they could share their stories through an interview, and their objects and items such as photographs, documents and wartime artefacts could be digitised, and that's all in our archive, and we'll be launching that tomorrow, and it'll be free to use. If people go to theirfinesthour.org, they will be able to fill their boots, really.
Yeah, and Dr. Quinn, that will be of huge historical significance for generations to come.
Absolutely.
I mean, this event here this morning is going to be filled with young people and children. But if you read the papers, a lot of our youngsters don't even know what D-Day is. So how important, as a historian, do you think it is to make a note of all of these records and make sure that the message isn't lost somehow?
Well, education is extremely important, and fundamentally what our project is about educating people. And what we have done, rather than talk down to the people who told us their stories, we allowed people to tell their stories in their own words as they heard it, as they understood it, putting it into whatever context they could historically. It may not have been 100% accurate, but most of the stories we can verify their accuracy. But what we did was, rather than alter these items, we took them in as they were told to us. And it's important to do that because people need to hear the stories as they were passed down from the wartime generation. Very important anecdotes, very important family stories that were passed down from. And what it tells this generation, this young generation, is that in spite of the great stress and trials and suffering and times of sacrifice that they may have to endure in the future, people can get through it, and the wartime generation are an example of that, and that's what these stories are about.
So stoical. Well, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing that, their finest hour, launching tomorrow online. And Dr. Joseph Quinn, thanks for your time this morning. So interesting hearing what he had to say there, because it resonates with me. I've been thinking about my own grandfather a lot over the last few days, who was also involved in all of this. He took part in D-Day +1 and made his way with the Canadians across to Sword Beach. But now we're going to cross to Gold Beach, to Arromanch, where Sophie Reaper has been spending the last few days speaking to veterans and soaking up the atmosphere there. Good morning to you, Sophie.
Good morning to you, Isabel. Yes, we are still here in Arromanch on Gold Beach, where 80 years ago this, along with Sword Beach, would have been where our British troops would have landed. Over to this side, you would find Omaha and Utah Beach. That's where US troops would have landed. And then over the other way, towards where Sword Beach is, you would find Juno Beach, which is where Canadian troops would have landed. Now, specifically here in Arromanch, as it stands now, it's actually quite a touristy, thriving little town along the Normandy coastline. But back then, it played a really, really important role in D-Day, and that is because it's where the artificial port of Mulberry Harbour was installed. Now, if you take a look into the channel, you'll see just along the over on the horizon, you'll see that there are still some remnants of Mulberry Harbour there in the channel, all the way along the coastline. So it really gives you a sense of the scale of how large it actually was, how large an operation. In fact, it allowed for 9,000 tonnes of material to be delivered every single day once D-Day had begun all those years ago on the 6th of June in 1944. British troops would have been brought in through the channel on amphibious vehicles and landing crafts brought onto the beach. You can't see much of the beach right now because the tide has actually come right in the last hour or so, but they would have landed on the sand. It was then their responsibility to make their way up, as everyone was doing along the Normandy coastline, up the beaches to try and take back this crucial bit of France from the Nazis. And evidently, as we know, as of history, it was such an incredibly important day because they were successful and they brought about the beginning of the end of World War II.
OK, Sophie, thank you very much. Well, this morning, the focus probably is going to be very much here in Portsmouth, and we are expecting things to get underway from about 10:45 when the first royals start to arrive. I just want to show you a little bit of what we're looking at here. This is the royal box over to the left of your shot there. That's where His Majesty the King and the Queen and the Prince of Wales will be sitting a little bit later on, with lots of other VIPs, although, of course, they are at pains to stress the VIPs today really are the veterans. And then if you pan across, Lucia, you can see the stage here that has been set. They've got this fantastic emblem, D-Day 80, and actually set to a sort of cloudy blue backdrop, which is perfect, actually. Blends into the sky immaculately. And on the stage, we are expecting lots of performances. We're seeing a military orchestra, a drumming band. We're also going to be hearing from a military choir. And Dame Helen Mirren is going to be hosting all of the events here for the day. So it promises to be a fantastic day. Lots of school children as well. And we'll be bringing you lots more from this special event throughout the course of breakfast. But now, back to you in the studio, Eamonn.
Thank you. Very interesting turnout. Also to say, I mean, I think today or tomorrow, it's a good time to revisit one of those films like The Longest Day or D-Day 6th of June or whatever, just to put it all in context, that, you know, we don't get fooled into thinking that, you know, it's a big celebration and a concert, and there's a lot of awfulness that happened in that invasion, and it didn't all go according to plan. Pegasus Bridge and everything else that you can learn about and find out about. It'll help you understand it all. The weather, don't understand it myself, but Aidan McGivern does.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office. Cool winds for many of us today, along with showers. Although the showers won't affect everyone, it's going to be mostly fine in the south. Certainly we start off with some early sunshine across East Anglia, south and southeast England. The cloud will build through the morning, and by the afternoon most places are rather cloudy, although there will be some brighter spells coming through at times. It's not going to feel particularly warm because we've got this cool and blustery northwesterly breeze, most notable across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. That's where the bulk of the showers will be moving in. Some of these showers will be lively with perhaps some hail and thunder in the far northwest, where it's going to be just 11 or 12 Celsius. In the south, mid to high teens, and where we get some sunshine and shelter from the winds, pleasant enough, but not particularly pleasant across Scotland. Those showers will be moving in swiftly through the day. Cold enough for some snow to be falling from those showers above around 600 metres for the Scottish mountains. Now for Northern Ireland, the showers will be on and off through the day, interspersed by brighter spells, some heavy rain appearing for Cumbria and Lancashire at times. But for parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, fewer showers, a greater chance that we end the day with some blue skies, and we keep those clear skies into the evening and overnight. As a result, it's going to be a chilly night in many places. Temperatures dipping into the mid to low single figures, but there'll still be some showers. There'll still be a gusty wind coming through across northwestern parts of the country, and that will continue to drive showers into the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales first thing Thursday. Thursday is a similar day to Wednesday, so if you've got the frequent showers on Wednesday, expect more of the same on Thursday. Likewise, if you've got mostly dry, fine conditions on Wednesday, similar on Thursday. Wouldn't rule out the odd shower in the south, but that's where the best of the sunshine and the highest temperatures will be 16 to 17 Celsius, mid to low teens further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, we will create our own little bit of sunshine, artificial though it may be, but it is fantastic because it is officially summer, and we have got a brand new summer giveaway, £15,000 in cash. We've got, you can have, there's all sorts of bits, iPods and 500 quid to go to theme parks and various things like that, but don't have me tell you all about it. Here it is, and here's what you've got to do to win.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Some of the big headlines this morning, they're dominating the newspapers. So they're saying Kapow, feisty Rishi floors Starmer over £2,000 tax rise. Again, he's called feisty, he's called fiery. He comes out swinging. He lands big blows against Keir Starmer. Did you watch it last night, the leaders' debate? And what did you think? Who was the winner? We're back talking that next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Just going through the newspapers and the headlines as regards the big TV debate, the first of the leaders' debates last night. Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, they traded blows. It was the first TV debate of the election campaign. And the Prime Minister told the audience that Keir Starmer would raise taxes by £2,000. These are just, you know, if you're on an average salary or whatever, you're still going to be 2,000 quid worse off, he said. Keir Starmer hits back at this. He calls the Conservatives' handling of the NHS unforgivable. And he then tells Rishi Sunak that he doesn't understand the cost of living crisis. Not that Starmer doesn't understand it, Sunak doesn't understand it. Anyway, here's some of the highlights of what was said.
Keir Starmer said, smash the gangs. We put new laws in Parliament that have now led to almost 1,000 criminals and people smugglers being arrested, serving hundreds of years in jail. Because we do need to smash the gangs. Keir Starmer voted against those laws. So as ever, you say one thing here, but your track record says something completely different, and you can't be trusted to tackle immigration.
But I don't want to put a ceiling on our ambition, so let the whole lot go.
The waiting lists are coming down. But what Keir Starmer didn't mention to you, which you did, Julie.
Waiting lists 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. He says they're coming down, and this is the guy who says he's good at maths.
Yeah, they are now coming down. They are now coming down.
7.2 when you said you get them down. 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. I'd like you to explain how they're coming down. We will get rid of the tax break on private schools to pay for it. That's a tough choice. I do understand that. It's a tough choice.
We will, on July the 4th, win this seat. I'm humbled to be here. I'm flattered by your reception, and I promise I will do my best.
No, this is important. Mark my words. Labour will raise your taxes. It's in their DNA. Your work, your car, your pension.
Thank you. Okay,
you name it,
sorry,
Labour will tax it.
I'm just going to just draw breath there a moment.
And let us draw breath now with political commentator John Oxley. Good to see you, John. So much to get through. There's so many areas. Could I just start with maybe Nigel Farage here? And no matter what you think of Nigel Farage, surely it's not right that a young woman thinks it is her right to walk up and douse him. It turned out to be a banana milkshake, but it could have been acid.
Absolutely. We're very fortunate in this country with the access we have to politicians. They more or less act like normal people. They don't have lots of security going around with them, and that's a huge privilege and one we should be grateful for, and it's ruined when people take advantage of that to do idiotic things. And we've already seen in the last few years the horrendous risk that MPs can face. Joe Cox, of course, Sir David Amos, Stephen Timms as well, a long time ago, who was stabbed but survived.
Do you think, John, that this would change any way that politicians are campaigning? Would it deter people from going into the business as such? Will they have more security? What do you think?
I think there's a real risk it puts people off. I mean, there's lots of things about choosing the life in politics that are already not particularly attractive. And the more we hear about the abuse that MPs face, whether it's online abuse, whether it's verbal abuse, or even when it gets physical, that's not the sort of thing that makes you think, I want to get in and do that.
OK. And on screen now, you'll be able to see, because we talked about Clacton there, these are the people who are also running in Clacton. Let me talk about the debate last night, the leaders' debate. And my thing about Keir Starmer, of course, is that he's not a good performer. He's not good at making speeches, I don't think. However, I think in this particular scenario, he does perform. He comes alive in a debate situation.
Yes, I mean, he has a background that's suited to him. He was a leading barrister, a very successful barrister. He's used to thinking on his feet and coming up with arguments. And I think he has a style that is very calm and collected. And I think what he tries to do is present himself as the reasonable guy in the room. And I think that comes across better in a debate than it does necessarily when he's going for those sound bites. Or
but meanwhile, Rishi Sunak's coming along and saying, this guy is a bit of an unseen enemy here. There are things that you've got to be careful about, this guy. And he was a bit like a dog with a bone, wasn't he, last night?
Rishi Sunak was definitely on the offensive against Keir Starmer. You saw it all through the debate. He came out fully swinging. He was quite tetchy at times. He was speaking over the moderator some of the time. He was really going for him. And, with the polls as they are and with a lot of people preferring Starmer to Sunak overall, that was probably the best strategy last night, to really try out.
But fear is a good strategy as well. And if you can convince people they are going to be worse off in terms of their take-home pay, for instance, they're bound to think again. And so the accusation is that we all would be, well, certainly most people will be £2,000 worse off under Labour.
Yes. So what the Tories have done here is they've kind of plugged in some of the Labour spending commitments into the computer system and sort of said what that would mean for taxes. So those are really Tory numbers rather than necessarily what the Labour Party are themselves saying. They're saying they're not going to increase the main taxes on individuals, whether it's income tax, national insurance or VAT. But it's one of the things that Sunak can try and press on. The flip side is there's a lot of people watching this thinking, well, am I bothered about taxes going up as much as I'm bothered about public services? And you look at some of the polling and there's a lot of public appetite for spending more money on health, more money on education. And I think a lot of people do accept that that money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah. What about coming from somewhere, coming from Scotland? John Swinney, leader of the SNP, he's basically saying this debate shouldn't have happened. I'm as much part of this. I'm the leader of the third biggest party in the whole country. Why wasn't I there?
I think the blunt answer is there's no chance of him being Prime Minister. This was about who is going to lead the country. Scotland had its own debate a couple of nights ago on their television. And really, with these debates, the more people you add into it, the messier it gets, the less clear it is for the audience, the less time they can speak for. There's going to be other debates with more party representatives through the campaign, but this was really a focus on who is going to be the next Prime Minister. So really, there's no room for the SNP there.
OK, that explains that one. Was there one issue that you looked at and thought, this is going to be recurring, they're going to come back to this in the next debate and the next debate?
I think it is this tax and spending commitments. I think the Conservatives will feel that those lines landed quite well. They certainly repeated them a lot. And Starmer was actually quite bad at batting them back. It took him sort of 40 or 50 minutes to really come up with an answer, and there wasn't the room to have a detailed attack. So I think that is going to be maybe the pivotal moment when we see them go head to head.
Could you see that reflected in polls? I mean, looking ahead to polls that they'll do today and the future polls that come up, what will the Conservatives be looking for? They will have to. I mean, such a deficit of 20-plus points in the polls. They have to make something back.
Yeah, I mean, people have been saying for a while they should narrow at some point. I think this will have maybe spurred into action some of those people who are not particularly happy with the Conservatives but are normally Conservative supporters to think, oh, actually, I probably should get down and vote to keep Keir Starmer out. But, you know, at the moment, they need to close, 5 points a week between now and Election Day. That's a huge, huge margin.
Huge, John. John, really appreciate your take on things. John Oxley is a political commentator. Thank you very much indeed. If you want to get in touch and you want to tell us who you thought won the debate last night, let us know your views. gbnews.com/your say. Let's now go back to Portsmouth as we commemorate the first day of marking the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And Isabel is there for us this morning. Morning, you.
Good morning, Eamonn. Yes, thank you for coming back to me here in Portsmouth at the Naval Memorial. I've got some special guests to bring you now from the RAF, no less. And I'd like to introduce you first of all to the RAF squadron leader, Andrew Bull, who joins me. Good morning to you. You're going to be leading the RAF's Guard of Honour this morning. Just give us a sense of what people can expect from you this morning and what it will mean to you to be involved in the commemorations.
So it's a huge honour to be involved in the commemorations this morning. The RAF contingent, as well as providing a lot of the musical assistance and route lining, are also part of the Guard of Honour, as you say. So we're sort of the bookends to the morning. We'll be there on the end, there at the start as well. And really significantly, we get to provide His Majesty the King the Royal Salute towards the end of the performance as well. And
they know what they're doing, don't they, this royal family? They're very closely aligned to the forces, and of course the Prince of Wales will be there, and he's spent time serving with the RAF as well. Does that add pressure a little bit?
It adds a lot of significance, definitely. There's no hiding, but we've got a really good relationship with the royal family. The King's Colour Squadron is really fortunate. We are the guardians of the King's Colour in the Royal Air Force. And we're on the King's Guard only a couple of weeks ago on Buckingham Palace and St James's Palace, so it's a great privilege to be here with them.
Fantastic. And we've also got Air Specialist Class 1 Robbie Evans. Good morning. You'll be involved in that Guard of Honour as well. Just tell us a little bit about how you'll be feeling this morning, thinking about those members of the RAF 80 years ago who set off from along the coast of England, doing what you so often do as part of your daily job. What are your thoughts on all of this?
So, yeah, absolutely. I can't lie, a little bit nervous, but I'm very excited to get up there and, just remember everybody who was there basically and did the World War II and the D-Day. It was, they're an absolute inspiration to everyone, and, I'm really happy to be here.
It's amazing to hear, people standing there, and I say people, men, strong young men in uniform saying they're feeling nervous about it when we know what you do. You've seen active service, and goodness me, you're off to Iraq very soon, taking on Daesh there. Still gets to you, though, these events a little bit, and I suppose that speaks to the significance and the history involved in all of it.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. It's a very heartwarming moment for everyone, especially a lot of the boys in the tent right now. They're definitely feeling it a little bit, but they're, again, very happy to be here, very excited, and yeah.
Well, Andrew Bull, you'll be watching as well as a fly past starts the commemorations a little bit later on, and the Red Arrows as well. How much will you be thinking about, I don't know if you had family who were involved in World War II, or just those people who've gone before you, a huge number of aircraft, 11,500 on day one of D-Day. I mean, you have some idea of what was involved in that sort of organisation.
The numbers are absolutely staggering. Over 150,000 troops deployed by sea and by air on the first day, 1 million troops in the following month. Absolutely remarkable. The international cooperation required to achieve that, absolutely amazing. The synchronisation to make sure it all happens is phenomenal.
And I've been hearing about the RAF's advance bombing. They've been targeting factories, aircraft hangars, munitions works, truck assembly plants, power plants in Munich, Hamburg, Nuremberg, Cologne, Berlin, and they played a key role in disrupting the German production line, and were absolutely pivotal in making sure that success happened. But I suppose it was the way that the forces came together. This wasn't just about the RAF, this wasn't just about the Navy, but it was also about the troops. And I think sometimes we forget that, don't we, that unity was absolutely key.
Absolutely critical at the time, and I think looking forward to now, as if not more important, because the forces are smaller, obviously, over time. You only got to look on the stage today, you will see contingents from all three of the services, you'll see representation from all elements of the military throughout the day, and our continued cooperation operations around the world is what makes us stronger.
And Robbie Evans, when you sign up to be in the RAF, you know that if you see active service, you do risk your life. And we know that there were tens of thousands of Allied troops as part of the D-Day invasion who paid the ultimate price. What is your tribute to them this morning? What would you say to them if you got the chance? I know that's a difficult question.
It's a very different question, yeah. I mean, obviously a thank you, and an absolute, the job that they do, we wouldn't be here today. So I don't think words can describe how much, commemoration they deserve. So a massive thank you, and, appreciate everything they've done, and, thank you for being
a massive thank you to you, Air Specialist Class 1 Robbie Evans and RAF Squadron Leader Andrew Bull. Thank you. Have a fabulous morning. I hope it goes really well for you. So we'll be back. We'll have lots of other fantastic guests for you throughout the morning here on this special edition of Breakfast. We'll see you very shortly.
Thank you. Manchester City suing the Premier League. Paul Coyte will tell you all about that after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M1 in Derbyshire is closed southbound from junction 28 for the A38 to Alfreton to 27, the Hucknall and Underwood turn for an investigation, causing long delays. In Leicestershire, the A42 is closed southbound for an investigation between junction 13 at Ashby-de-la-Zouch and the M42. Train services on the West Coast Main Line suspended between Watford Junction and Euston Station in London because of an incident. In London, the A5 Edgware Road in Paddington is blocked for an investigation north of the A404 Harrow Road at the Marylebone flyover, causing delays. On the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues getting onto the M25 because of roadworks, and there are delays of up to 50 minutes with some cancelled trains between Ammering and Worthing after a trespass incident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News, weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
What a scrap is brewing in the Premier League. Manchester City in contention for titles, but obviously now those titles are now seen as contentious by the Premier League. So City have said what, Paul?
Well, they've said that they are going to
basically legal action against the Premier League.
Right.
It's over something called APT, Associated Party Transaction Laws. Now, we know that there's 115 charges that are levelled against Manchester City.
Yeah.
This is going to be seen in November. This is something separate. So the law is, it prevents clubs from inflating commercial deals with companies that are associated with their owners. So... Right. So, for example, let's say, for example, that you've got a club, you're owned by some company, and then they happen to sponsor your shirt. So then they put a load of money in.
By Coca-Cola, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. Right. So then they're saying that they sponsor the club and they sponsor the shirt.
Yeah.
Why is that a problem?
Because it's a bit of an inside deal.
Okay.
They say that if you own the club, you can't then be the sponsor, because what it's doing is then it's affecting the financial agreements and the laws, which said you can only spend what you bring in, but then if you've got an owner, then they can put as much money in as they want, and then they can spend as much as they want on players.
But the net result of this is that you've got teams like Manchester City who would have a huge unfair financial advantage.
Yes.
But then it's always been that way.
Yeah.
You've had rich clubs and poor clubs. Now they want clubs all the same. Is that right?
Well, they like a slightly more level playing field. There's always going to be richer clubs than others. But when it comes to the super rich clubs, like Manchester City and of course Newcastle now, who can spend whatever they want on whoever they want, it's like, well, this is actually not fair. We need to level this out a little bit. They're saying that's not fair, and they're now going to take
fireworks.
It really
and
is. It really is.
We're not going to hear about this until the autumn or whatever.
No, this is happening soon. This is happening within the next couple of weeks. So the 115 charges, that doesn't happen until the autumn. So honestly, it's all. We just want to play football, don't we?
Yeah,
instead of all this nonsense.
I don't agree about clubs being able to own more than one club.
Yeah.
You know, this business that's
Manchester United and
United or another team involved in all that. No. We've got to get back to where we used to be. French Open, Novak Djokovic, he went out on Monday.
Yes.
What's his problem?
It's meniscus. You've had a bit of trouble with your meniscus?
I've had a strain in my meniscus.
Have you really?
It was torn, yes, it was torn.
Did it affect your tennis in any way?
It did affect my tennis.
Yeah. So the thing is, with Djokovic, he can't play anymore, so it means that Jannik Sinner is now going to be the new world number one, because Djokovic has only gone so far. And also, we were looking at how much he's played. 46 hours, 2 5-set matches. One finished at 3:07 a.m. Sunday. Yeah. He was out again playing on Monday as well. It's a lot to ask. He's 37 years old, but the thing he wants more than anything else, because he probably won't be able to play at Wimbledon, is the Olympic gold medal, because that's the only thing he doesn't have.
Oh.
So that's what he wants to keep himself fit for.
Where is the Olympic flame at the moment?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because it's been traversing the beaches of northern France.
Oh.
That was actually on Omaha Beach. They had the flame on Omaha Beach last week. Now, this is Le Puy du Fou. 2 million visitors visit Le Puy du Fou. It's a theme park with a journey through time. Look at all this. Isn't this wonderful? And they're just moving the flame from one person to another. It's just a giant theme park, and that's where it is at the moment. And it will then move on to the coast, and then we'll head over to French Guiana. So this is the last point. It's going to be on the mainland land for the last couple of days. Look at this. It's like Ben-Hur.
Beautiful.
Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that.
Ben-Hur.
Yeah. And so anyway, then
we've got to
it
move you on, and you're going to be back. And fascinating thing that Paul's talking about next time around is sporting heroes, and associated with the D-Day invasion, and we're going to be talking about that at 8:20. Thanks very much indeed for the moment, my friend. Back with a newspaper review right after this. Don't go away.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I've got a grade 3 astrocytoma brain tumour. Once I was diagnosed, I tried to do my claim with my insurance company and was rejected. It was then... They then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance,
This
John.
is Zurich,
And their point was, because you'd had some dizzy spells, which you hadn't told them about, they say dizzy spells equates to a brain tumour, which there's no evidence to support that.
I was with King's College Hospital. They ignored them. King's College Hospital were the experts.
And you were expecting £25,000?
Yeah, that was a critical illness claim.
Critical illness, because you've got a critical illness. Clearly, it couldn't be more critical, could it?
No.
Michelle, you've got a lovely, poorly husband, and you're also worrying about paying the bills and what the future holds.
Yeah.
What impact is this having on you on a day-to-day basis?
I try not to think too much about the future because it does upset me. I'm kind of thinking, when John does go, I'm left with a mortgage to pay and 2 young children.
How old are your kids?
5 and 3.
Right.
So it's incredibly tough.
And are you working?
I haven't worked since having the children.
Right.
And that's a decision we made when we had children.
In the grand scheme of things, this amount of money is a drop in the ocean for a company like Zurich.
Yeah, because I think they could make all this go away.
I've read some of the statement. Zurich statement. We're sorry to hear of the very difficult circumstances Mr. Rendler's family are experiencing. You're terminally ill, and they're calling that difficult circumstances.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I've got Norman Baker and Rennie Honderkamp here to go through the newspapers this morning, and I'm just realising, Norman, the Mr. Men books, right?
Yeah.
And there's 2 new characters. This could be you two in here. So there's Mr. Fib and Little Miss Surprise.
Well, I hope you're not saying I'm Mr. Fib.
You want to be Little Miss Surprise?
A suggestion in the Daily Star that Boris Johnson could be used to narrate Mr. Fib. Maybe. But I think Roger Hargreaves, who's the creator of Mr. Men, has done a fantastic job over the years, and kids love Mr. Men in my experience, and my daughters, I remember, grew up with them, and great to find that we've still got new characters coming through. Mr. Fib and Little Miss Surprise.
Mr. Tickle was always a favourite in our house.
That's right.
Very inventive, good stuff. Very sad story in London. There was a young baby, a newborn baby, found in a shopping bag, right? But the thing is, the police and the doctors involved in this made an amazing discovery. What was that, Rennie?
The discovery is that this is the 3rd baby from the same parents that's been abandoned in a shopping bag in London since 2017. There was one in 2017, one in 2019, and then one earlier this year. So these are siblings that are... 2 of them have already gone out for adoption.
Yeah.
And obviously we don't know where they are, who they are, or even if they're with the same family. That, for me, is heartbreaking because siblings should be together and these babies should be together. But also, what on earth is going on with the community around these parents? Somebody must know this woman is pregnant, and then there's no baby.
But none of us know what the story is.
We
behind
don't.
this.
And
we don't know they're the same fathers. We don't.
We do.
Know. We do we?
We do from the DNA.
Right.
Yes. So we do. So is there domestic violence going on? You know, is she unable
to access...
mental
health issue? Is
there mental health? But this woman and the father clearly need help, and we need to find out who they are. So there's a responsibility on the community.
What options would be open to you if you find yourself, pregnant and you didn't want the child?
So if you're pregnant and want the child, obviously depending on the time, and you could opt for termination, or you could opt for adoption. So, there are families out there who would chop off a hand for a newborn baby to adopt. Plenty of families, and give them a good life.
Well, we hope they end up well, and as you say, that there is some help and the mother and the father come forward. Norman, 4 out of 5 primary teachers spend their own money to help pupils.
Yes.
So kids are coming to school, and I presume we're talking about they're hungry most of the time.
Well, they're hungry, and they have got inadequate clothing often. For example, they don't come with winter coats in the winter or whatever. But I mean, I just think
they'll be tech poor as well. They'll not have
they
the
may well be,
iPads
but you find primary school teachers who aren't on huge salaries, actually, when you think about it, are actually spending a lot of their money themselves, more than £100 each per year as the average, to provide help for these kids who are coming to school without adequate food or without adequate clothing. And then also, by the way, 2/3 of them are spending money on classroom materials, which ought to be supplied by the school or by the state. And, you know, well done to the primary school teachers for filling in the gap, but there's a failures here, aren't there?
Not their job.
It's not their job. There's failures from the state by not having adequate materials and failures from the parents by sending out kids in that situation.
Right, absolutely. So schools should supply equipment, and there's no other debate to have around that. However, in terms of parenting, it's your job as a parent to make sure your child is warm and fed. Those are the two main issues. My mum, born during the war to a family of 6, said that they were as poor as church mice, but every single day they went to school clean, well-fed.
Yeah.
When she says well-fed, it might have been bread and dripping all week, but they still weren't hungry. These parents will have smartphones, they'll have gadgets. I'm sorry, your child must come first.
My mother used to say, soap and water costs nothing.
Exactly.
I think this would have gone overlooked in previous generations and you just deal with it, but that's not to say that it's right or whatever. Your views on that, please do let us know. Let's talk about the banknotes, Norman, featuring King Charles. They become available today, I believe.
They do, but there'll be some time before people notice them because they're not going to withdraw the ones already in circulation, so they're going to replace them as and when the existing notes become past their sell-by date, if I put it that way. And, of course, we've now got these new notes, which I regard as ghastly, actually, these plastic notes, which, by the way, have animal products in them. Some people object to that.
Is that right?
Yeah, they do. And I used to like the paper notes, which I thought were lovely. And these plastic things are horrible, and they can fall out your pockets. Anyway, from as far as King Charles is concerned, he is only the second monarch to be on a note, because up to 1960, there were no monarchs on notes. The Queen became the first one in 1960, and he's only the second monarch to be on notes.
Right, guys, thank you very much indeed. The guys are going to be back in 40 minutes' time with more stories from the papers. Hope you can join us for that. Right now, you're going to join Aidan McGivern for a weather picture.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office. Cool winds for many of us today, along with showers. Although the showers won't affect everyone, it's going to be mostly fine in the south. Certainly we start off with some early sunshine across East Anglia, south and southeast England. The cloud will build through the morning, and by the afternoon most places are rather cloudy, although there will be some brighter spells coming through at times. It's not going to feel particularly warm because we've got this cool and blustery northwesterly breeze, most notable across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. That's where the bulk of the showers will be moving in. Some of these showers will be lively with perhaps some hail and thunder in the far northwest, where it's going to be just 11 or 12 Celsius. In the south, mid to high teens, and where we get some sunshine and shelter from the winds, pleasant enough, but not particularly pleasant across Scotland. Those showers will be moving in swiftly through the day. Cold enough for some snow to be falling from those showers above around 600 metres for the Scottish mountains. Now, for Northern Ireland, the showers will be on and off through the day, interspersed by brighter spells, some heavy rain appearing for Cumbria and Lancashire at times. But for parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, fewer showers, a greater chance that we end the day with some blue skies, and we keep those clear skies into the evening and overnight. As a result, it's going to be a chilly night in many places. Temperatures dipping into the mid to low single figures, but there'll still be some showers. There'll still be a gusty wind coming through across northwestern parts of the country, and that will continue to drive showers into the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales first thing Thursday. Thursday is a similar day to Wednesday, so if you've got the frequent showers on Wednesday, expect more of the same on Thursday. Likewise, if you've got mostly dry, fine conditions on Wednesday, similar on Thursday. Wouldn't rule out the odd shower in the south, but that's where the best of the sunshine and the highest temperatures will be 16 to 17 Celsius, mid to low teens further north.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to half an hour to trains between Selby and Hull because of a signalling problem. The M1 in Derbyshire is closed southbound from junction 28 at Alfreton to 27, the Hartland Underwood turn for an investigation. There are queues from junction 29A at Markham Vale. Long delays too as you divert. In Leicestershire, the A42 is closed southbound from junction 13 at Ashby-de-la-Zouch to the M42 for an investigation. Train services on the West Coast Main Line are suspended between Watford Junction and Euston Station in London because of an incident. In London, the A5 Edgware Road is closed each way north of the Marylebone flyover at Paddington for an investigation. There are queues on the M26 on the westbound approach to the M25 because of roadworks. Delays of up to 50 minutes with some cancelled trains between Amory and Worthing thanks to a trespasser earlier on. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 8 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 5th of June. You're tuned in to breakfast here in GB News with me, Eamonn Holmes in London, and in Portsmouth, Isabel Webster.
Yes, it's a special programme for you this morning, as royals and dignitaries will be arriving here in Portsmouth to mark the national commemorative event. We'll be joined by His Majesty the King, the Queen, the Prince of Wales, as well as the Prime Minister and the leader of His Majesty's opposition.
So, Isabel, in Portsmouth, in Normandy, they're preparing to honour the legacy. The American President Joe Biden flies into France. Our reporter Sophie Reefer is there to report on events throughout the day. Political punches exchanged. Rishi Sunak fights back as he accuses Keir Starmer of wanting to raise the tax burden by £2,000 per household in this, the first general election head-to-head. What did you think of it?
And the sport this morning, with 115 charges facing them in November, Manchester City have gone on the attack now and launched legal action against the Premier League over what they call unlawful financial rules. After losing to them on Friday, the Lionesses beat France in St Etienne to give them much more of a chance to defend their Euros title in Switzerland next year. And can you imagine the sporting superstars of today as soldiers on D-Day? Well, it happened to hundreds of their counterparts during World War II, and we'll find out more about them later.
Feeling on the chilly side in the wind today, with frequent showers in some parts of the UK. But not everyone will be affected by these showers. Some places will have a mostly fine day. Find out all the details in the forecast coming up soon.
Well, you're very welcome to this special edition of GB News at Breakfast. The nationwide commemorative event, which marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day, gets underway today in Portsmouth. Isabel is there.
Good morning, Eamonn, and good morning, everybody listening at home or on the radio. We thought we'd bring you with us today for a slightly different look and feel to breakfast, and here to really centre the nation's attention on this fantastic commemorative event being organised on the eve of D-Day. We've been treated to a beautiful sunrise here, but let me tell you, that was not the case 80 years ago. In fact, the weather was so bad that the Allied Command, who was based here in Portsmouth under General Eisenhower from the United States, decided to postpone D-Day by 24 hours. And it was on this eve that troops along the coast of England amassed and prepared for what was to be the largest sea invasion in history. Well, today we'll be joined by His Majesty the King, as well as his wife the Queen and the Prince of Wales. We'll also have the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition here, fresh from their debate last night, joining us in the Royal Box to watch what will be a celebration but also a sombre series of reflections on this important anniversary, because of course it was the Normandy landings and the invasion and this new creation of a front in the West that ultimately led to the success of the Second World War, and we pay tribute to all of those veterans who are able to attend today. But let's bring in our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who can tell us more about why this particular site has been chosen. Good morning to you, Mark.
Good morning, Isabel.
Getting lots of sunshine
Beautiful.
here this morning, absolutely gorgeous. We're on Southsea Common, and just behind you is the Naval Memorial. Tell us a little bit about this obelisk.
Well, this obelisk was erected in 1924 and has since been updated. It commemorates the 25,000 sailors who were lost at sea, either died when their ships were sunk or were buried at sea and have no land grave. And that's 10,000 sailors who were lost in World War I, 15,000 in World War II, and it is just very moving. I've been across there. The obelisk itself, of course, is very impressive, but all around are these bronze plaques with the names of all 25,000 sailors who gave their lives, and of course many of them were killed in the operation on D-Day, that maritime operation that you alluded to, the biggest the world has ever seen. They could only dream of such an armada these days. It was just huge, 7,000 ships, many of them the landing craft that had to go right up and onto the beaches to deliver the men and the tanks and other equipment, and they come under direct fire, lots of them damaged and sunk, crews on those injured and killed as well. It was just the most tremendous operation.
There had been months and months of planning in all of this. 5 months before D-Day, international troops joining British troops here in the United Kingdom from all over the world, the United States, Canada, Australia, the Commonwealth, and Czechoslovakia and Croatia and Greece, all here. And that paints quite an incredible picture in itself. The idea of all these young men, very often 18 to 25, something like that, away from home, some of them already having seen horrendous scenes in the war, in tented camps, perhaps not even language, but united in one common aim, and that was to get across the channel behind us and to defeat the Nazis.
Yes, indeed, and you know, they soon learnt the language in together and working very closely together for many months as they fought on the beaches there, and then tried to push forward into very well dug-in German positions. It was a high toll that was inflicted on the Allied forces, the British, the Americans, the other nations represented, trying to get off those beaches and then push forward. It was a couple of months before they were eventually able to recapture Paris, and it was an operation that, as I say, we spoke about the maritime element of it, but it was an airborne operation as well, to parachute thousands of troops behind enemy lines to take vital bridges, to hold those bridges for the Allies to get their tanks and equipment across eventually as well. It was such an endeavour, and it really is humbling to think of what these young men went through.
Yeah, really humbling, because you know, they were just human, and as you've been describing and painting a picture for us this morning, many of them not really knowing whether this was the real thing. They'd been preparing for many months. Some of them had already seen horrendous action already in World War II. I think of my own grandfather who'd been in the Dieppe raids, which had been a disaster, and I think lots of lessons were learnt from that. But they then had to face up to, I mean, today's world, we'd be all talking about PTSD and, you know, how on earth are they going to cope? But they got on, incredible bravery. And what were they greeted by when they landed on these 5 beaches in Normandy? Because, you know, this was a new front, but there were heavy battles.
Well, the Germans were well dug in. They were expecting an invasion, but they didn't know exactly where. And of course, there was 5 beaches along the Normandy coast that were the eventual landing post. As you hear the bands they're preparing for the greeting, of course, for His Majesty the King later this morning. But yes, they were prepared for an invasion. They didn't know where. It was interesting actually talking to some historians yesterday. What the Allies were doing was they were bombing the areas that they were going to land, but of course they couldn't give that would be a telltale sign to the Germans that, oh, this is the area they're going to land on. So what they had to do was bomb even heavier further up the coast in areas they were never even going to go near.
Decoy bombs, essentially.
Yeah,
I mean, the idea that they had to, you know, organise all of these troops, move heavy equipment, look after the welfare of these people in the short term whilst that was happening, and then sort out deceptions as well. It was such an incredible achievement. Well, Mark, stay with us this morning. We're going to be talking a lot more to you throughout the course of the programme, but I just want to reflect a little bit on why we're here. You might have heard that band warming up, and we are expecting a fantastic commemorative event with a huge band with 79-piece orchestra, 25-strong choir, Royal Marine drummers as well, and all being watched by the royal family. So I'm going to bring in our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, to talk about that. If you don't mind persevering through the lovely accompaniment this morning.
I've got my own royal fanfare this morning.
About the role of deception in trying to be successful in D-Day. And you've got a bit of a royal slant in all of this. Tell us more.
Yeah, we certainly do. Of course, it was the King's grandfather, George VI, who was monarch during World War II, and he and his family were used, really, by the British Armed Forces to try and deceive the Germans into thinking that the Allied invasion would not be taking place in Normandy, would actually be taking place somewhere else. So the King George VI was sent to the southeast of England to greet troops, trying to deceive the Germans into thinking that the invasion would be taking place in Calais, and equally he was sent to the Orkney Islands in North Scotland as well, again trying to deceive the Germans into thinking that the invasion was going to take place in Scandinavia. And all of that works because there wasn't as many German troops in Normandy when they landed on the 6th of June 44.
And I believe Queen Elizabeth II was also recruited on occasion to go and visit troops in the wrong parts of the country as all part of that. But this was a royal family who during the war very much wanted to be involved in the war effort, and I believe there were some very high-level discussions to dissuade the King, the sovereign, from actually going and being part of D-Day himself.
Yeah, King Charles III has revealed actually that his grandfather was incredibly frustrated that he could not get on one of those D-Day ships in 1944. Of course, it would have been incredibly dangerous. In times gone by, centuries gone by, it would have been the King leading his troops into battle. Of course, that did not happen during World War II. And equally, King George VI had to persuade the then Prime Minister Winston Churchill to not get on a ship. We have a letter which basically talks of the King's anxiety towards the safety of Winston Churchill, and ultimately he was successful in dissuading him from getting on one of those ships. But the King did manage to visit Normandy probably 5 or 6 days after the D-Day landings.
Well, through the prism of history we can see what wise counsel that was to protect both of those important gentlemen. But let's talk about the royals today. They've been sort of preparing for this big commemoration, meeting veterans and also releasing some new material for us.
Yes, they have. So we're going to have the King, Queen and Prince of Wales here later on today for his commemorations. Ahead of that, the King and Queen met 4 D-Day veterans in Buckingham Palace. That's Arthur Orborne, John Dennett, Bernard Morgan and Jim Miller. And we have a little bit of a sneak peek as to what we can expect from that video today.
What are your recollections of D-Day itself?
When we came off our landing ship tank down on the beach, the army were there collecting the poor soldiers who drowned on the initial landing.
fantastic to see the King looking so well as well and meeting with the veterans, and we will see him in person here a little bit later on. And you have some more tales as well that they've been unearthing in all of this.
Yeah, the King was visibly moved actually with the full length, which we'll hear from later. But one of the veterans took along his lucky football boots, which he tied to his backpack on the way to Normandy in 1944 and got him through the war. Equally, another one of the veterans who the King and Queen met still has his blood-soaked dog collar from when he was shot in the lung during the D-Day invasion. He was actually saved by his friend Walter, who tragically was killed just the following day. And it's those kind of those heartwarming testaments and tributes we're going to hear a lot of today. And by having the King as head of the armed forces, kind of representing everybody in this and bringing all the different elements together, I think it's going to be very poignant today.
Indeed. OK, Cameron, thanks very much indeed. We'll have more from Cameron a little bit later on in the programme. The reason that we're in Portsmouth today, because of course it wasn't just Portsmouth that was one of the key cities in preparation for D-Day, there was Plymouth as well. But Supreme Allied Command was based in a place called Southwick House in the north of the city here, and it's where Eisenhower finally decided, General Eisenhower, to say, OK, let's go. And he said, this is the time, 6th of June, let's get this operation underway. They'd carefully selected 5 beaches in Normandy specifically so that they could take the weight of the artillery and have the right sea conditions for all of the vessels as well. Well, we can cross now to Arromanches and Sophie Reaper, who is in one of those 5 beaches and can tell us more about some of the commemorative events happening in northern France. Good morning to you, Sophie.
Good morning, Isabel. Yes, we're here in Arromanches, Gold Beach, just behind me here, but we're right now in the town square where preparations are well and truly underway ahead of tomorrow's commemoration events. You'll see here behind me, yesterday there were thousands and thousands of people. Of course, it's still a little bit early here now, but it is starting to build up. You'll see the flags up there that have all been put out. People already queuing to get in the D-Day Museum, which is the building you can see just over there. The noise you can hear is all a part of that preparations as they prepare this square for the events that will be taking place not only tomorrow but today and over the next week or so. This isn't just a one-day thing. This is a true celebration of what the troops gave up 80 years ago. Now, if you see here over to my right-hand side, you'll see the channel. The tide is right in at the minute, so we actually can't get onto Gold Beach, but by about midday when the tide is out, I imagine just like yesterday when we were here, there will be thousands of people on that beach along with various military vehicles, and as well we think perhaps some veterans will be here or around this area today as well. Of course, those veterans who risked their lives on D-Day, those phenomenal stories that we've been hearing over the past week. I had the pleasure of speaking to one of those veterans last week, Albert Keir, who was in the Navy in 1944. Here's a little bit of his story.
On D-Day, I was sure I was going to get home. I made sure I was going to get home.
On the 6th of June 1944, a then 18-year-old Albert Keir played his part in D-Day. 80 years later, and he still remembers how he felt at the time.
We did feel a bit scared at that time and different things. Everything goes through your mind when you're in danger. We were coming in and out of the ports. I was in the Navy, of course. I was going out serving the sea for anything like bombs underneath the water. We used to have to search for them and then drop depth charges to blow them up.
D-Day marked the beginning of the end for World War II, which for many troops like Albert would mean they would finally be able to return home.
We went back home and we were very happy to get back home, because you never know when you go to sea if you're ever going to get back again. I felt marvellous and safe when I got back into England. I've always been quite happy ever since I got back. I've never been sad or anything like that since I got back.
8 decades later, and Albert is still proud of what he accomplished on D-Day. But like so many veterans, he is remarkably humble.
There were so many of us. so many in the Navy, and they're doing the same job as you. So how could you be a hero over all these others? You couldn't. I feel happy that we won the war and that we beat the Germans and we got them out of France.
Sophie Reaper, GB News. You know, hearing stories like Albert's whilst looking out on this beautiful view here, it is truly harrowing to think about what they would have experienced 80 years ago tomorrow. Just looking out at the channel, of course, today the sun is now shining. We know that the weather at that time would have been really rather different, but it's still, you get a real sense of what they had to get through. And of course, very thankful that Albert was one of those who survived D-Day. So many gave their lives for freedom, but just sitting here and taking it in is incredibly poignant as we build to that anniversary.
Yeah, and doing it so beautifully, Sophie. Thank you very much. I'm getting goosebumps hearing these stories and these testaments from the survivors, frankly. So reticent to call themselves heroes, but we all know how all of our freedom is dependent on the sacrifices that they made. And fantastic stuff, Sophie. We'll have more from her in Normandy a little bit later on in the programme. It's livening up here. Lots of rehearsals getting underway because the Royals are going to be arriving in about an hour and a half. So bear with us as things get a bit noisy. But I just want to introduce to you now Sergeant Tim Hind, who is one of the musicians who'll be making a bit of a noise this morning. You're a trumpet player, and I believe you're going to be in the central band for the RAF this morning, part of the fanfare. Tell us exactly what your own role is going to be.
So we are going to be on stage throughout the ceremony, providing the fanfares in various different items. So you'll see us either side of the stage. It's more of a visual aspect, and the music is very secondary for us. It's certainly provided by the trumpeters on stage, but it provides that visual impact.
Yeah, it provides the visual impact. It creates an atmosphere here, of course, as well. And music, I suppose, always very linked to the forces, isn't it? And that might seem surprising when you think about it, because you know it's a very serious business, life and death situations. Tell us, as a musician, about that kind of crossover between music and warfare.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a privilege for us. We get to be at the forefront of many of the parades. So if it's people that are coming back from deployments, marching them back through the towns, providing that sort of pomp and ceremony. But equally, as a trumpeter, I'm privileged to be part of sounding the last post at service funerals. So it goes from the two extremes of being able to remember those people that have been before us, but also celebrate.
Yes, the celebration and, of course, the remembrance, such key parts of today. And when you are playing your trumpet today, you will be thinking, of course, of the sacrifices made. And what are your reflections of what you've learned and heard about over D-Day over the years?
It's just amazing sort of an amazing sacrifice for a start, but also the sort of that kind of inspiration of how much that they put on the line on those days for them at the time, but equally for us now. And I think that they're those kind of stories which they need to live on.
Absolutely, and so many of them doing it so quietly and in such a dignified manner. I do wonder if it happened today, if we would be able to rise to the challenge. I hope and trust that we would. But we pay our respects, of course. A little bit nerve-wracking having the Royals watching on, or you're used to this?
Kind of. It still kind of gives you that little bit of the hairs stand up on the back of your neck. But yes, to us, this is we're quite used to this. We've been part of the coronation, obviously, recently, and the unfortunate funerals over the last couple of years. But it still gives you stand a little bit taller on the day.
Well, good luck. Don't mess it up. I'm sure you won't. Thank you very much for your time, Sergeant Tim Hind. We appreciate it very much indeed. And Eamonn, touching on really what you were commenting on earlier, that yes, there is a bit of a party atmosphere here. We're hearing lots of the warm-up acts, and people are excited about this event. But at its heart, a serious message of remembrance. And the real VIPs here today will be those veterans, and we pay tribute to them throughout the course of the day here on GB News. But for now, Eamonn, back to you in the studio in Paddington.
And I think, Isabel, a reawakening for all of us as to the importance of history. I mean, we talk about these events, but I mean, you're experiencing the legacy of all of this, and we should all think that we are all here doing what we do because of the sacrifices made by those people involved in D-Day.
Yes, and we hear reports, don't we, about the next generation, youngsters not really knowing much about what D-Day is, and that is disappointing. There's a big effort to try and bring the young along with this commemorative event today. Lots of school children will be eventing because, of course, if we don't learn the lessons of the past when we're in such an uncertain world, goodness me, world's politicians or British politicians even talking about conscription now, it's never been more important really to remember and to pay tribute to the ultimate sacrifice.
Thank you very much indeed, Isabel. We'll speak again shortly, and we'll be speaking to Claire Coutinho, who's the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. We're going to be talking to her very, very shortly after we bring you a weather update. Aidan McGivern with that.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office. Cool winds for many of us today, along with showers. Although the showers won't affect everyone, it's going to be mostly fine in the south. Certainly we start off with some early sunshine across East Anglia, south and southeast England. The cloud will build through the morning, and by the afternoon most places are rather cloudy, although there will be some brighter spells coming through at times. It's not going to feel particularly warm because we've got this cool and blustery northwesterly breeze, most notable across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. That's where the bulk of the showers will be moving in. Some of these showers will be lively with perhaps some hail and thunder in the far northwest, where it's going to be just 11 or 12 Celsius. In the south, mid to high teens, and where we get some sunshine and shelter from the winds, pleasant enough, but not particularly pleasant across Scotland. Those showers will be moving in swiftly through the day. Cold enough for some snow to be falling from those showers above around 600 metres for the Scottish mountains. Now for Northern Ireland, the showers will be on and off through the day, interspersed by brighter spells, some heavy rain appearing for Cumbria and Lancashire at times. But for parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, fewer showers, a greater chance that we end the day with some blue skies, and we keep those clear skies into the evening and overnight. As a result, it's going to be a chilly night in many places. Temperatures dipping into the mid to low single figures, but there'll still be some showers. There'll still be a gusty wind coming through across northwestern parts of the country, and that will continue to drive showers into the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales first thing Thursday. Thursday is a similar day to Wednesday, so if you've got the frequent showers on Wednesday, expect more of the same on Thursday. Likewise, if you've got mostly dry, fine conditions on Wednesday, similar on Thursday. Wouldn't rule out the odd shower in the south, but that's where the best of the sunshine and the highest temperatures will be 16 to 17 Celsius, mid to low teens further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Just a quick word about the great summer giveaway here on GB News. £15,000 in cash. That's just the least of it. Have a look.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Just want to say hello, good morning now to Claire Coutinho, who is the Secretary of State for Energy, Security and Net Zero, and she's going to be here straight after the break. Don't go away.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In places like News Corp, right, that an organisation I know reasonably well, when that poor guy died in America,
George Floyd, you're talking
about? Yes, they had a 9-minute silence for him, right? a more absurd and ridiculous idea I'd never come across in my life. How do you feel about 9 minutes for George Floyd?
Well, of course, that's the length of time that he was strangled by a police
I know why it
officer.
was, but how do you feel about that?
Well, I think a lot of the black staff in particular in News Corp probably appreciated the fact that it was taking a stand. And if you look at businesses...
Why do they need to take a stand about what the police do in the United States
well, what
of
about
America?
the guy, what about the jeweller tonight who has died in Richmond in Surrey when two, how shall we put them, hoodlums of colour actually had a chokehold? He went home and he killed himself. There are lots of things going on in our world, as you well know, which are very upsetting. Okay. And if we're going to stop every time that somebody dies in unfortunate circumstances, we'll never get any work done.
Well, Stella, a final word to you.
I think sometimes, yes, equality and diversity can be a waste of money when it goes to things that are not necessary for the function of the organisation. But when just last year you had Birmingham Council being pushed into bankruptcy because they were found out to not have given women equal wages, then
because they paid bin men more than they paid cooks.
But then you can see Ben's point that if they had someone who was looking appropriately in equality and diversity and the actual practical policy implications of what they were doing, then maybe you wouldn't have this situation. You wouldn't have this legal liability. That's what Ben is saying. This is a multi-million pounds organisation. Like, it needs to have someone looking seriously and taking responsibility for these decisions.
The People's Channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Government Minister Claire Coutinho, we say good morning to her because she is today. You're at the scene of whatever happened last night, where the dust-up happened at Salford in Manchester, Claire. Just looking at the papers, fiery Rishi, feisty Rishi. How do you think he did last night?
Well, I think that he did well because actually what Keir Starmer's tried to do in this election is skate through while saying sort of high-level statements without setting out any plans underneath. And whether it was on bringing the immigration numbers down, whether it was on the NHS, whether it was on the £2,000 of extra tax rises that Labour's policies would cost working families in this country, he simply could not answer. And this is a person who apparently, someone was saying that Starmer had been preparing for the debate since Sunday. And my concern is if he couldn't even prepare for a debate, how could he prepare to run the country?
Well, you see, he doesn't really have to do much preparation because you guys have given him the answer straight away. You're sort of saying, what are we going to do for this? Well, the answer is we're hardly going to do any worse than the Conservatives have done. And, you know, the things you can't say things like judges on our record because your record ain't very good.
Well, look, there's lots of things that I could talk about when it comes to the Conservative record. I could talk about the fact we've got the best readers in the Western world when it comes to our children. I could talk about the fact that we've got some of the lowest unemployment on record. I could talk about the fact that we fixed the £70 billion black hole in the defence budget that Labour left in 2010. But what Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak were talking about yesterday was the future. And actually what Keir Starmer couldn't do is he couldn't rule out the fact that his policies, as set out by the Labour Party, would cost families £2,000 in extra taxes. And he couldn't rule out the fact that pensioners for the first time under Labour plans would have to pay tax on their state pension next year. And actually that's the substance of what people are choosing between. And I really thought actually it was quite shocking that on all of those major issues, Keir Starmer was woolly. He didn't have any clear plans or proposals to address some of the challenges that the country is facing.
The Daily Telegraph agreeing with you. Starmer on the ropes over tax. The Times, Labour accused on tax as Sunak comes out fighting. So, you know, it's a big deficit to make up, a 20-odd point deficit in the polls. And the Prime Minister, I suppose he has to come out fighting. That's what he has to do. Your area, energy. Keir Starmer was talking about that this week in Manchester, as it turned out. Where would you take exception with him on that?
Well, I mean, so many areas. And you look at Ed Miliband's plans for energy in this country, and all he would do is raise people's bills and raise taxes to pay for it. So the £2,000 of taxes on working families, the most expensive part of their policy plan is actually Ed Miliband's Green Plan, which they've said will cost £23.7 billion over the next parliament. Now, you could have a debate about that, because I think we're severely underestimating that cost, because they used to say it would cost £28 billion a year and have now watered down the price tag but kept all of the policy costs. But really, what I want to talk about is the principle, because ultimately, when it comes to the Conservatives, my priority is always going to be to make sure we can have cheaper energy and cheaper bills for people. So whether it's the tariff reforms, which can save people £900 a year, or standing charges or anything else, my priority is cheaper energy. Whereas Ed Miliband's priority is to decarbonise further and faster than anybody else when it comes to major economies, no matter what the cost is for working families. And you could see that last night in the fact that Keir Starmer could not rule out that his proposals would mean this additional amount of £2,000 of taxes for families.
So the difference there, Claire, is that you would say you would be less green. I mean, you'd have to openly admit that you would not be green at the same pace as Labour would be going at it.
Well, nobody, like when you look at all of our peers in other countries around the world, nobody is going to do the pace that Labour and Ed Miliband want to do. And that's because of the enormous costs it would put on families in this country. So when it comes to clean energy, I would say our record is very strong. Nobody has built more offshore wind, for example, than us, bar China, anywhere in the world. We've done an enormous amount to bring energy into the system, but I'm always going to do that in a way which thinks about the costs to working families. And actually what you get with the Labour Party and Ed Miliband is this blind rush to go further and faster than anybody else, even if that would mean hiking up people's bills or their taxes.
Energy is a national issue. It affects us all, wherever part of the country that we're in. And if you're in the peripheries, in Northern Ireland, for instance, or Scotland, it may be more expensive. Now, a lot of that energy is produced in Scotland, and Scotland's leader, John Swinney, wasn't there at the debate last night. Now, he takes exception to that. He thinks he should have been there at the debate last night as the leader of the third biggest party in the country. What do you say?
Well, look, when it comes to July 4th, there's only two people who are going to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and that's Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. So if you vote for anybody else rather than the Conservatives, you're more likely to put Keir Starmer in charge. And that's why it's really important that we flush them out. And I think Labour and Keir were very exposed last night when it comes to major issues. Like I said, migration, the fact that Labour's plans means that state pensions for the first time next year will be taxed, whether it's the £2,000 of extra costs for working families, whether it was the NHS, on every single major issue that the country faced, they simply could not set out answers. And that is the choice that people are going to have to make on July 4th.
Well, thank you for your answers today, Claire Coutinho, the Secretary of State for Energy. Full of energy this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Nice talking to you.
Thanks so much, Eamonn.
Thank you. Right, we're going to take a break there. We've got Paul Coit, we've got a special guest in sport today, and he's going to talk about what sportsmen during the Second World War, what they did, what they contributed to the war effort, and particularly the D-Day invasion. Talking about that next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Lanarkshire, the A749 is closed in both directions along Stonelaw Road at Ruther Glen, where a lorry hit the railway bridge. The M66 in Greater Manchester is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 1 and 2 from Ramsbottom to Bury, causing queues. On the M1 in Derbyshire, there are long southbound delays from junction 29A at Markham Vale to 28 at Alfreton after an investigation. In Leicestershire, the A42 is closed southbound from junction 13 at Ashby de la Zouch to the M42 for an investigation. investigation. In Suffolk, the A14's partly blocked westbound by an accident at junction 54 at Sproughton, causing delays. Train services on the West Coast Main Line are suspended between Watford Junction and Euston Station in London for an investigation. And in London, the A5 Edgware Road is closed north of the Marylebone flyover in Paddington for an investigation. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Now, we've got a very interesting man to talk to, not just Paul Coyte, he's a very interesting man.
Yeah, I'm going to say I wasn't
very interesting man, but we have got the man who writes the programme Silent Witness, the BBC
Correct.
TV programme. Amelia Fox is in that one. Very, very interesting. And his name is Nigel McCrae. And Nigel, what is Nigel's interest?
Nigel has written books. He's a fan of sport and also has written books about the war as well and combined the two. So about footballers who fell during World War II and also written about cricketers, rugby players, Olympians as well.
Ooh.
And also, you know, can you imagine footballers of today? Can you imagine Harry Kane or Jude Bellingham being called up and said, right, D-Day, and because it was exactly what happened, obviously back during the Second World War. And we've got Nigel to talk to us now. Morning, Nigel.
Good to see you, Nigel.
Hiya.
Yeah, interesting stuff. This. What sort of names are we talking about? How big are the names we're talking about?
Well, you've got to remember, although we commemorate D-Day today, it was a huge operation. So you had the commanders going in early on to attack German strongpoints. And several were killed there, then killed on D-Day, then killed as they pushed inland towards Caen and places like that. So on the actual day itself, there was probably the most interesting was probably Lieutenant Colonel Archer Dennis Branford Cox, Royal Engineers, and he was the very first officer to be killed on D-Day. He was with the Royal Engineers, was clearing areas for the main troops to land, and Germans spotted him, mortared him, and killed him. And he was an extraordinary man. He was a first-class cricketer, quite well known, very well respected. Played for Cambridge against Oxford, or the other way around.
What was the reaction to things like that? Was there public horror, public outroar at this, or did they try and keep these things quiet so it wouldn't affect morale?
No, I mean, it was front-page news when certain footballers or certain cricketers, rugby players were killed, because in a way it made the public even more angry. If you like, are more willing to fight the Nazis. It's like, when the Germans thought they could blitz London into surrender and scare them, and all they did was the exact opposite. It just made them more intense and more determined to win the war.
Gosh.
Nigel, what was the difference between, if we think of soldiers that were going in and different sports? Because things were different probably in those days. I mean, is it my imagination that maybe rugby players would have been more officers, cricketers would have been a mixture of both, footballers were just more of a common touch and would go in lower on in the army? Is that how it was?
Yeah. That's pretty much, because, I mean, footballer was very much a working man's game.
Yeah.
Rugby union, which it was, because there wasn't much league then. So rugby union was almost officers straight from public school, Oxbridge. They just played rugby, so the England team especially were all public school officer class. Olympians varied, depending how fast you could run or how high you could jump. And cricketers, was again mostly officers because they specialised in it. And but there was some working class. When I wrote the book about the cricketers, for this and for the First World War. There was a much more of a mix, as you say, within the cricketers getting killed and wounded.
Nigel, who was better at this, at putting people into the spotlight like this? Were the Americans better at this than we were?
No, I don't think so, not particularly, because you bear in mind they came in later, and we'd already been through a hell of a lot before they turned up. But no, I don't think so. I mean, I think when we had a famous footballer killed, it was front page news. It wasn't a kind of suppress it. I mean, they always died gallantly, and they all died instantly. If you ever read the books about their biographies, all of them died gallantly, and all of them died, quickly. I can assure you that many were gallant, but they didn't all die instantly. And that's the tragedy of it.
It's truly incredible stories that have gone throughout the war then, and so many different sports as well. I imagine that these were very, very fit men. I mean, if you think of soldiers that would be conscripted that would then have to train, did it give them any advantage? I mean, I know it seems like a strange thing to ask, but when you think of the fitness of these sportsmen and how well known they were.
Well, a lot of them went into training. They started training all the other troops, because if you were on duty one day and Beckham suddenly turned up to train you, you'd rather like that, I would have thought. Or one of the great cricketers turned up to train you in running, etc. So yes, they were used for training and for publicity. Here's some famous cricketer or rugby player or footballer. He's just joined up. I mean, I think at one of the football grounds, two famous footballers turned up and recruited hundreds. They all marched out of the ground together and down to the recruiting office.
They were there in front because what I'm trying to actually understand is, were they truly as bigger names back in the 30s and 40s, these sports people, as we see today? Because I know that they say things change and players were more accessible to the public, but were they that well known as they are now?
Probably bigger, because bear in mind now how many footballers we have from here and from Europe. They just had the newspapers, and they're heroes on a Saturday when they're standing in the stands. So they got a hell of a lot of publicity, because there wasn't that many of them. You can put your thinking cap on now. You can think of hundreds of well-known footballers who've pushed it.
Nigel, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for painting that picture and putting us in the picture with sporting heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Fantastic books. They are fantastic books as well. It's written. They're really excellent. Yeah.
Good man. We're going to go back down to Portsmouth, where Isabel is out and about and meeting various people taking part in today's commemoration. Isabel.
Yes, hi Eamonn. Good morning, everybody. I just want to introduce a really interesting guest now, somebody who will be on this very stage a little bit later on, David Dye Lawrence. Good morning to you. Now, you are in the RAF and you've spent many years there, been to Afghanistan and been to Iraq, but today you're speaking in your capacity, sort of your side hustle, if you will, within the RAF as a historical speaker. And you do this a lot at RAF Cramwell, which is sort of the RAF version of Sandhurst, where you're an instructor as well. Yes, what will you be doing today?
So today I'm one of the speakers, one of the three military speakers, specifically speaking about RAF air power and the air plan then for D-Day and the build-up to that.
And there was a huge role for the RAF, almost more in advance really of D-Day, when they really went for those German supply lines. Tell us exactly what was involved.
Yes, exactly that. So it was crucial, the reconnaissance, build up the reconnaissance picture and then pass that on to Bomber Command, who would then go in with 218 and 617. Probably the two most famous squadrons there, providing drop-in window then in Op Taxable and Op Glimmer, and then other bomber squadrons bombing the supply routes, munitions factories, and then fighter command going in then thereafter suppressing the German fighters for D-Day itself.
Yeah, and it's impossible to overstate how critical that was. The combination of the fact that many of the Nazi troops were diverted wrongly to other parts of the continent based on our deception work, the brave work of the RAF in going for those supply chains made it possible for that invasion that we're remembering today.
Exactly that, yeah. It was absolutely vital in disrupting that to prevent the Nazis and Hitler's Third Reich then, if you will, coming down and launching that offensive against us, preventing D-Day, which of course never happened, thankfully.
And obviously, having been in the RAF for many years yourself, I mean, you have a professional take on all of this, but it's the history really that you love. And you've spent a lot of time, just even with talking to me, you're sort of fascinated by everybody's stories, and that's something that really appeals to you.
I think it's vital, Isabel, to be honest with you, and people always ask, why do you do your historical speaking, and why? Because we need to remember, because this generation is not going to be here for much longer, and before we know it, we're going to have Korean, Malayan veterans, and then they won't be here, and so on and so forth. And there's the ripple effect. We need to get these stories, get that knowledge and what they've gone through, what they've done, and pass it on, which is why I deliver them the stories of the RAF, the history of the RAF.
And you will be delivering those stories today to the veterans, a number of them assembled here, members of the public, lots of school children, but also to the royals. Are you feeling a little bit nervous? Because I know you've not done that before.
Extremely nervous. It's as simple as that. I'm not even going to beat about the bush with that one. Very nervous, but what a privilege and what an honour to be doing it, and in front of the kingdom as well,
Yes,
which is fantastic. So,
well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us this morning. Good luck. We'll be watching with interest, and I'm sure you will nail it. He's got away with words, and apparently not only is it his first time speaking in front of the royal family, or indeed the Prime Minister's first time doing live television. And actually, I should give away, he's a huge GB News fan, so he's very pleased to be doing that for the first time on this channel. I believe Michelle Dewberry is your favourite presenter. I did say present company accepted, of course. Anyway, for now, lots more coming to you from Portsmouth, but for now, back to the studio in Paddington.
In the studio, Norman Baker, Dr. Rennie Honda Camp now. The story's making the news today. And Norman, here's a story. Joe Biden basically is getting himself, well, embroiled in a bit of verbals with Benjamin Netanyahu. What's he been saying?
He's been saying that there's every reason to conclude that Netanyahu is prolonging the war for his own political self-preservation.
Right, what does this say about the relationship between the USA and Israel?
It says it's a mess, actually, because on the one hand, he clearly doesn't like Netanyahu and thinks Israel's behaving badly in Gaza. On the other hand, he's supplying weapons and carrying on as normal.
Because what it really says, and that's why he's supplying weapons and carrying on as normal, is that actually he's just trying to keep his party happy, and he's got an election coming up, and whilst he is a friend of Israel, his party is less so, or certain tribes of them are. You know, if this had happened on American soil, Joe Biden would be bombing the hell out of Middle East, without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay. But it is true to say that Netanyahu, I think, is prolonging the war, because if he doesn't prolong the war, he'll be out of office. He'll then face charges in the Israeli courts.
He wants the hostages back.
And that's part of it.
Norman, here's a story which I admire. I do admire. I don't really know what my feeling is. I mean, this appeals to me. So, EasyJet, the airline.
Yes.
There's a man who runs a driveway cleaning business, which is always very welcome, very good, and he calls this EasyJet Wash. EasyJet Wash.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's quite good, but he's been accused of being a calculating and profiteering brand thief by EasyJet. What do you make of this one?
Well, he's a one-man business, and he's had business for some time, and he's charged £100 or thereabouts to jet wash people's drives.
Yeah.
You know, good luck to him, is my view. And it's not very accommodating, I think, to have somebody who's a multi-millionaire in charge of a big business trying to stop a one-man business, which he is doing, and threatening legal action against this one guy. So I say to EasyJet, back off.
I always think that these companies should just actually make the best of this, and they could actually do an ad campaign on, while you're on holiday, you can have your pathway jet washed.
Gosh, amazing. Now, quite disturbing this. We go to Brazil now, and we talk about an ostracised Brazilian tribe. They live in a remote region of the rainforest, and teenagers in this tribe have got a problem. What is that problem, Doctor?
So this is really sad. It's the Marubu tribe, and the internet was introduced via Elon Musk's Starlink about 6 months ago. And now the tribe leaders are saying that from a tribe that are very sexually conservative, kissing in public is not allowed, you know, they're very, very restrained, that their teenagers are now addicted to pornography. And the tribe leaders said that they're now lazy, they're glued to their phones and WhatsApp groups. They actually are showing aggressive sexual behaviour and playing video games all day. And for me, what this said was, this is what we have already done to our children. And parents need to step away from screens, take control, take away access to the internet, and think about what this is doing to our children. There's another study out today that say that when children go onto online games and apps, their neuro pathways change and they become physically addicted to it. We need to start parenting. We are damaging our children, and whilst it might not show, like smoking, if you give them a cigarette or a glass of wine, it does show in their behaviour.
This is scary. I was listening to the radio this morning, and up pops an advert talking about artificial intelligence. It was advertising a game or something, and it was saying, we introduce a new artificial intelligence and whatever. And I just recoil. I think, just take away thinking power from everyone.
Well, look, I agree with Ian's comments absolutely about the impact on kids. But I'd also say how sad it is that here we have this tribe in the middle of nowhere that suddenly, it's existed for centuries, millennia, and now suddenly it's being subject to this. Is there nowhere in the world that's safe anymore?
Well, not if you're drinking a Bruce Forsyth can of beer, which has every chance of exploding on you.
Oh, Eamonn, I love your links. You're very good at your links. This is Brew York's beer called Juice Forsyth, which is a great name, isn't it? Juice Forsyth. And the trouble is, they had to recall them because it might explode because there's too much carbonate in the product. So higher. Yes. goes the explosion.
Didn't this happen to Jeremy Clarkson on his farm with his cider that had too much of a certain fungi in the yeast and something, and he had to recall all of the Jeremy Clarkson's beer?
Yes, it exploded.
Yeah.
OK.
Not nice to drink it, not nice.
Guys, thank you both very much indeed. We've got to leave it there. Norman Baker and Brent. Sorry, I've just been told to go to Portsmouth. No? No, we've got good. Even better news, we've got 3 minutes. Right, good. So we're not going to Portsmouth. Let's talk about, I tell you, these two horses. I was out and about the other day, and a load of household cavalry came past.
I saw your tweet.
Yes.
It's an amazing sight, isn't it?
An amazing sight. And there was no one on them. Maybe they were being exercised or whatever.
They have one in the middle and one either side.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought about these two horses from the household cavalry. I don't know what their names are, but basically there's pictures ready in the papers today about them recuperating. Tell us more.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. So 5 of these horses got spooked on an exercise, rampaged through town, and 2 of them really injured themselves very badly. We had that really biblical image of a white horse with blood all over it. So they were shipped out to the countryside where they've been quite badly injured, but well treated, I'm sure. And they're now recuperating. And there is a beautiful picture in the papers today of this black horse and this white horse nuzzling each other's faces in the field on their way to recovery. And apparently 3 of those 5 horses will be back on parade for the King's birthday, the Trooping of the Colour.
That means 2 won't.
No, those 2 probably won't yet, but they will be ready.
They will be back
at some
into
point.
service.
It's a good news story.
Good news story. What do you both make of the D-Day celebrations and D-Day 80 years on? Some of it's very, very emotional, it has to be said. And the Mirror front page here today says these are all good men. Overwhelming emotion as the heroes return.
Sorry, Norman.
I mean, there are 2 aspects to this, I think. First of all, is the individuals involved. And for these guys who were there when they were 18 or 20 years old and are still with us now, it's probably the most important day of their lives in some respects because, obviously it's hugely important historically. And it's I imagine, quite a challenging situation to have been in to do that. I mean, there's also an aspect as to what D-Day means and what the war means. And I think, some of these guys were obviously in their minds were quite rightly fighting for freedom, fighting for a better world, fighting for democracy. And I think we ought to make sure we hang on to what we were fighting for in the way we construct our society today.
Which brings us to the survey last week that showed that 48% of young people didn't even know what D-Day was.
No.
So we have to do something. We have to put it into our school curriculum, because in 5 years' time, we're not going to have any of these living memories, are we? Let's face it.
Yeah.
So we need our children at a very young age to know what happened, why it happened, and why they're enjoying the life that they're enjoying today.
Based on relevant and recent history,
Yes.
not stuff the hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Exactly.
Guys, thank you both very much indeed. Lovely having you in today on this special day. We appreciate it. We'll be back with more from Portsmouth commemorating D-Day after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Lanarkshire, the A749 is closed along Stonelaw Road at Brother Glen, where a lorry hit the railway bridge. The M66 in Greater Manchester is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 1 and 2 from Ramsbottom to Bury, causing queues. On the M1 in Derbyshire, there are long southbound delays from junction 29A at Markham Vale to 28 at Alfreton after an investigation. In Leicestershire, the A42 is closed southbound from junction 13 at Ashby-de-la-Zouch to the M42 for an investigation. The M5 near Bristol is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 17 and 18 from the Cribs Causeway to the M49, causing queues. And there are delays of up to an hour and 20 minutes with some cancelled trains on the West Coast Main Line between Watford Junction and Euston Station in London. And that's because of an investigation earlier at Bushey. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very nice to see you at 9 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 5th of June. You're tuned in to a special edition of Breakfast here in GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster. I'm in London. Isabel, as you can see there, in Portsmouth. Why are you in Portsmouth?
Well, I'm in Portsmouth today, Eamonn, as royals and dignitaries will be descending here on the Royal Naval Commemoration event. The King, the Queen, the Prince of Wales, plus the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. Stay with us for more.
Meanwhile, in the news, Normandy preparing to honour its legacy as the American President Joe Biden flies into France. GB News reporter Sophie Reaper is there for us throughout the morning.
The crowds are starting to build here in Arromanches as we are now less than 24 hours away from the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
In politics, political punches exchanged. Rishi Sunak fights back as he accuses Keir Starmer of wanting to raise the tax burden by £2,000 per household. That's the first general election head-to-head.
Feeling on the chilly side in the wind today, with frequent showers in some parts of the UK. But not everyone will be affected by these showers. Some places will have a mostly fine day. Find out all the details in the forecast coming up soon.
Well, here we are. Tomorrow, the 80th anniversary itself, 6th of June, will be commemorated, but celebrations and commemorations begin today with that one. And a lot of interest raised in this, a lot of you talking about, you know, you didn't know about this, so you want to get involved in tours of these areas, these beaches, involved in all of this, and to just relive the footsteps of the brave servicemen and women who had to take part in that. Let's go now to Portsmouth, where one of the commemorations is going to be today, and Isabel there for us this morning.
Well, isn't that fantastic to hear, Eamonn, that people are learning as well as part of this commemoration? And I suppose that's absolutely at the heart of all of this, because the risk, of course, is as time passes, 80 years since D-Day, that we forget not only the sacrifices that were made, but also the lessons to be learned when we're in an increasingly fragile world. So fantastic to hear that our listeners and our viewers this morning wanting to know more about Portsmouth and our own role in what was ultimately the turning point in the Second World War. Well, welcome to beautiful, sunny Portsmouth. It's been a fantastic morning so far. You can already see the beautiful stage behind me, which is going to be the scene for all the commemorations in just over an hour and a half's time, when the royals here start to arrive. We're expecting His Majesty the King, the Queen, the Prince of Wales, the Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak, if they can bear to face up to each other after a slightly tetchy sort of debate last night. They'll be here as well. But absolutely at its heart will be the veterans, and not to put too fine a point on it, they are of course fewer in number than ever before, most of them in their late teens and early 20s when D-Day took place, and it was the largest seaborne invasion in history, taking off from here in Portsmouth and also, of course, from Plymouth. And the whole of this coastline was tented and full of troops on this day 80 years ago. It was supposed to be today, of course. We know that that had to be postponed due to the weather. General Eisenhower at the Central Command here in Portsmouth took that difficult decision to delay things by 24 hours, but ultimately everything was decided and they set off on the 6th of June. Well, I want to introduce to you two very important guests this morning from the Navy. Good morning to Lieutenant Commander David Cummings and Able Rate Megan Hilton. Thank you both for your time this morning. I want to start with you, if I can, Lieutenant Commander. You are very much involved and responsible for the Naval Guard of Honour, frankly, overseeing all of the sort of naval elements today. Tell us what we can expect from that.
So we've got two parts. Firstly, at the beginning of the show, where we will come on with our other two services of the Army and the RAF. Then we will show our colours to the King, the colours that have been already bestowed on us and blessed by the King. And then we will have a second part at the later on in the show, where we will again show the colours and be coming on with a slightly smaller guard.
A huge privilege for you to be doing this, and I know that you have seen active service all over the world and had an incredible career. You were telling me some of the places that you've been to. Your first trip ever coming from Hong Kong and back through the Suez Canal. But for an event like today, you know, what will be in the forefront of your mind as you're leading your men and women?
So really the veterans, and also passing that on to the next generation. So again, those lessons are learned, and to commemorate those people who, a lot of them gave the ultimate sacrifice. I also have a bit of a personal connection. My great aunt was an officer in the Women's Royal Air Force. She took a contingent of Women's Royal Air Force personnel over to the continent on D-Day +2 and was the first contingent over there.
That's absolutely incredible. That can't have been very common.
No, she volunteered, and that was part of the duties that they were required to do, was to support the troops who already had landed on D-Day.
And did that inspire you and make you want to join the Navy? Because you were telling me a moment ago, people can't see, there's a big green fence behind you, but actually that's the sea right there. And just beyond that is the Isle of Wight, where you grew up. And you really loved the sea. You wanted to join the Navy, even though you've got Nelson's legs. Tell us about that.
So I started sailing at 8, and once I got onto slightly larger boats, I realised that I was prevalent to seasickness.
Oh no!
But no, like Nelson, you just have to overcome it, and it's a good barrier to try and beat yourself with. What doesn't hurt you makes you stronger.
Well, goodness me, that's a good message for today indeed. Able Rate Megan Hillen, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You're very new to the Navy, unlike your senior colleague to your left. Just at tender age of 21, 1 year you've been in the Navy and due to go and take part in active service yourself very soon. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I soon deploy to the Red Sea, so my first deployment.
And what will your role be? Because I'm not necessarily in that deployment because I know it's operationally sensitive, but what is your role within the Navy? I believe you've got a lot to do in terms of the operations room, looking at radar and signals and the like.
Yeah, so I'm electronic warfare, so I'll deal with like the threats and I'll sit on the equipment, look at like frequencies and radars and stuff.
And you also are from a military family, and D-Day means a lot to you, not only in terms of your immediate family, but grandparents or great-grandparents. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my great-uncle, he was a paratrooper, and on D-Day he landed on Pegasus Bridge. I've also got a great-aunt that was a Wren in the Navy, and we believe that she was a code breaker. So I think that's quite cool, especially because I am obviously a female in the Navy myself.
Very inspirational. Is your great-uncle still with us? He's passed away.
No.
So, I mean, my grandfather was involved in D-Day, he +1, and he went to Sword Beach, but he's no longer with us. And I find myself looking amongst the faces of the veterans, thinking of him. Have you been doing the same, and do you feel a sort of personal connection?
Definitely, and especially when we see all the veterans today, you've just got to remember that they're like the heart of this and like their heroism and sacrifice for the day, like what they did 80 years ago. Like, it's incredible.
And Lieutenant Commander, in terms of the operation, and we've talked a lot this morning about the history, the preparations that took place, the nerves that must have been felt the night before of those men and indeed the women, like your great aunt, before they went and did their duty, really. But just give us a sense, really, of how difficult and elaborate that planning was, as far as you're aware, because you have a sort of inside track, don't you, sort of military and forces precision. These things don't come together by accident.
No, they don't. They take weeks, months, years of planning, and as you go through the planning cycle, obviously things change and are updated, and so it's a continual process, an iteration of what you do. And of course the great old adage, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, is so very true, and that is exactly what happened on D-Day as well. And General Eisenhower had a huge amount of support from all the Allies for D-Day, and of course, lest we forget, certainly in the Navy, we always consider the elements, and the sea is a cruel mistress often, and she was on that day, yet she abided and let us carry on the following day.
There was a lot of Nelson's legs for those troops as they embarked on that invasion. Lieutenant Commander David Cummings and Able Rate Megan Hillen, thank you for your time. I hope you have a fantastic day as part of these commemorations. 115,000 Allied troops made their way across the Channel, just on the left here for me, across into Normandy for those landings. 83,000 of those were British troops. So Sophie Reaper has been in Normandy for us all week, and she joins us from Arromanches this morning, where commemorations will be continuing. Indeed, Princess Anne doing a lot of special events for the event this afternoon.
Absolutely, Isabel, and the atmosphere is really now starting to build here in Arromanches. There's a crowd starting to build. There's a big queue here behind us to try and get into the D-Day Museum. People really preparing to celebrate and commemorate, as we are now less than 24 hours away from the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And two people who'll be partaking in those commemorations join us now, Raoul and Miguel. Very good morning to you, gentlemen. You are reenactors who are going to be taking part in the activities over the next couple of days. Raoul, tell me what it is that you're going to be getting up to today.
We are going to visit this museum finally, and then we are going to Pegasus Bridge, who was part of the British sector, to visit here the bridge and also the museum that is there, and make a tour in the whole British sector.
Amazing. And Miguel, I'll come to yourself next. Why is it so important to you to be able to play a part, even just a small part, in such a hugely historic day tomorrow?
Yes, for us it's very important because we want to pay tribute to the people who gave their lives for our liberty, for our freedom. And even this afternoon we are going to make a parade in Bernières-sur-Mer of this unit, La Chaudière, to the Canadian cemetery to fulfill with this tribute.
And for you, it's a sign of respect, isn't it, gentlemen, to be able to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a sign of respect for these people who gave their future, their lives, to bring Europe the long term of peace of his history.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And that is the amazing thing that we've been seeing over the past few days here along the Normandy coastline. People have got their own special ways of commemorating those who risked their lives for us on D-Day. And I'm sure over the coming hours and the next 48 hours particularly, we'll be seeing plenty of commemorations and celebrations.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Sophie, and we look forward to hearing more from you throughout the course of the day. I just want to bring in Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent, because there's such an interesting royal element in all of this, not just because, of course, they are our guests of honour here today. In the royal box, we are expecting His Majesty the King and the Queen and the Prince of Wales, but also because we're learning amazing stories about actually how the royals were used, frankly, as willing decoys to try and divert troops away from the Western Front.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the royal family has a hugely important relationship with the armed forces, and it's the King's grandfather, George VI, who was the monarch during World War II, and he was actually used, along with members of his family, to try and trick the Germans into thinking that the location of the D-Day landings would be somewhere else entirely. So, for example, King George VI was sent to meet troops in southeast England, trying to trick the Germans into thinking that it was going to be Calais was going to be the landing spot. Similarly, sent to the Orkney Islands in Scotland as well, to try and trick them into thinking it would be Scandinavia, and of course that drew the German troops away from Normandy, and it did work, because on the 6th of June, of course, all those troops landed.
And not only were they absolutely pivotal in the success of D-Day in that way, they actually wanted to get involved in this invasion themselves, specifically the King. Tell us about how he had to be talked down from that, frankly.
Yeah, of course. I mean, in centuries gone by, it would have been the monarch leading his troops into battle, but of course, by the time World War II happened, that was not the case at all. And the King's actually revealed, as part of a video we'll see played later, that he was incredibly frustrated, George VI, that he couldn't be part of the Normandy landings on one of the ships, because it simply would have been too dangerous. And by extension, he then had to persuade the then Prime Minister Winston Churchill not to get on a ship himself, saying, "You give me incredible anxiety if you did so. It would be far too dangerous. Sit this one out."
Wise
exactly,
words.
And go a bit later. So King George VI did go to Normandy as well as Churchill a bit later on.
The King and Queen have opened up Buckingham Palace to a number of veterans in the days preceding today, and sitting down with them. Tell us a little bit about that, because it's been really touching to see some of the material that they've released this morning.
Yeah, it's been really poignant, and you can see the King in the footage actually being visibly moved by what they're really going to be what they've been saying. So 4 D-Day veterans met the King and the Queen inside Buckingham Palace, hearing their personal stories of the day, including the fact that one of them tied his lucky football boots onto his backpack when he was storming the beaches of Normandy. Another one still has his bloody dog tags for when he was shot in the lung. His friend saved him, but then his friend was killed the following day on the Normandy beaches. And all of this the King and Queen heard in Buckingham Palace, real-life, first-hand testimony of what went on. And, of course, all the commemorations happening this morning would be particularly poignant for the royal family.
They will indeed. OK, Cameron, thanks very much for bringing all of that interesting insight into the D-Day story. It is going to be a poignant day. It is going to be incredibly poignant because of those veterans who are fewer in number than ever before. But it is also going to be a celebration, because we know that D-Day led to the success in ultimately winning the war. So here and throughout the day on GB News, we will be reflecting on all of the commemorations, and it's promising to be a wonderful day. Lots of bands and orchestras and choirs, and Dame Helen Mirren herself leading those events. But for now, back to you in the studio, Eamonn.
What an operation, not only 80 years ago, but the one today as well. Incredible. We see that Labour are to establish a squaddies czar, and they will champion the rights of military personnel if Labour does win the election. the Independent Armed Forces Commissioner will speak up for servicemen and women and hold ministers to account. Now, I know that will go down well with a lot of you, because a lot of you just think that, you know, it's fine for events like this. People praise the military and whatever, and then they forget about accommodation and certain rights and various things after that. And it must be very strange being signed up to the military and then suddenly being in what's it called when you're not in the military? It's Civvy Street. That's what it's called. It's called Civvy Street after that. So that's an interesting one. Your views on that, very welcome. Your views, if you were to win our summer giveaway, I'm sure would be ecstatic. £15,000 in cash, lots of other goodies to go along with it. Here's how you can win.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, we are having a little snack of something good to eat. A yard-long sausage roll. Today is National Sausage Roll Day. We're letting you share in that after this short break.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan Tonight, weekends from 9 p.m.
England's new patron saint, Gary Lineker, a man holier and more virtuous than Mother Teresa and Gandhi combined, strikes again. Never one to miss the chance of some moral posturing, goal-hanging PR opportunist Lineker has spoken out about tonight's Champions League final. He tweeted the following: "This is the first time I'll be cheering for Real Madrid in a Champions League final." The German side Dortmund have signed a 3-year sponsorship deal with weapons manufacturer Rheinmetall. Now, Gary Lineker is not a stupid person. Following a stellar career on the pitch, it was a storied transition to broadcasting. And let me tell you, he's worth every penny of that £1.3 million a year of licence fee payers' cash to introduce football clips. So how did it escape the attention of this bright man that our democracies and our freedoms are protected and defended by the weapons produced like companies such as Rheinmetall? In fact, we should big up, not cancel, Rheinmetall, who have produced some of the armaments which are now helping Ukraine. Well, I'm very confused because I thought Gary Lineker was very supportive of Ukraine and their battle for survival. But now he wants to take their weapons away. I'm very, very confused. After all, they're going to need weapons with which to defend themselves. They can't fight by sending off tweets like Gary does. Now, many people love Gary Lineker. He has over 8 million followers on Twitter. This idol of the progressive left battled HMRC in court to reduce his tax bill by almost £5 million. This latest Lineker rant about war is weapons-grade nonsense. Sorry, Gary, but you're firing blanks.
The People's Channel.
My friend Paul is back in the studio again, and the reason he is because today is...
Yes, it's the big day.
It's National Sausage Roll Day. Right. And Greg's, the bakery, they have...
Look at the size of my sausage roll, Eamonn. Look at that.
This is a yard long, right? So there is... how many sausage rolls would make up a yard?
I don't know. Should we have a look?
Yeah. So this is very good, and these are available at a certain amount of Greg's stores around the country. You can go on the website and find out.
I can't get in there. Does it pull out?
Oh, they're hot.
Look. I don't want to rip it, but look there, I have one there. Look at that. There's hundreds. There's hundreds. I've got one at this end. There's one of them. They all go the way through.
Nobody believes us because they can't see them.
Goodness me.
Wait a minute.
Has a man ever been so desperate to get to a sausage roll?
You pull that in. Right.
Here we go.
Here they come. Here we go.
This is what you want to see.
This.
Oh, my. There's at least 2 days worth there.
2 days worth. Incredible.
There's another one. And there's another one.
The team will eat well today.
Here we go. We'll have one of those.
Let's sample these and see how they go down.
You're a connoisseur when it comes to sausage rolls, aren't you? Because I am too.
There's nothing as bad as a bad sausage roll.
Yes.
Which this isn't bad.
Oscar Wilde said that.
Now, this is really nice.
Yeah.
I can remember as a youngster that for special treats, we would have sausage rolls for tea.
Oh, you knew how to live, didn't you?
Yeah. The only dilemma was it ketchup or brown sauce with them?
No. Can't have anything on these. You'd ruin them, surely. When I was a kid, we used to go swimming in the morning and then get a sausage roll and hot blackcurrant straight after that.
And that set you up for the day?
Set me up for the day. That was my little treat after doing swimming lessons.
Baked beans?
Not with sausage rolls, sure.
Oh, come on. What are you going to have with sausage rolls? You wouldn't have peas with them.
Yeah, but they sit alone. They're a meal. That's what makes them so special. No, but you can't have anything else with them.
You can have baked beans.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd have mashed potato with them. You could
stick it in the top there.
Might be a bit carb-rich, really, as a result.
Let me ask you a question.
What?
Seriously, though, if you had to do that for a huge amount of cash, how many do you reckon you'd be able to get through?
I mean, how much would this cost me?
No, how many could you eat?
Oh.
How many do you reckon you could do? Someone said, like, it's huge. There you go. You've got to do as many as you can. How many do you reckon you'd be able to get through?
I'm not one for food. I'm not one for eating a lot. But...
I know that.
But... Oh, I don't... Wait a minute. I
You could do
maybe 6.
OK, all right.
What could you do?
I reckon I could do 6. Should we do that?
And then 7 would win?
Yeah, OK. Let's do that. I'll clean you off there.
OK.
Too crumbly.
We're going to indulge in a little eating competition. Will it be 6 or will it be 7? And if we've finished all 20, we'll be back tomorrow morning.
Well, I don't know whether I'll be able to.
6 a.m. Thank you very much indeed for watching today. It's been good. We're well nourished and fed. I hope we've made you hungry. Available at certain selected Greg's outlets. Just Google and find out where. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sausage Rolls. Thank you, Greg's. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office. Cool winds for many of us today, along with showers. Although the showers won't affect everyone, it's going to be mostly fine in the south. Certainly we start off with some early sunshine across East Anglia, South and South East England. The cloud will build through the morning, and by the afternoon most places are rather cloudy, although there will be some brighter spells coming through at times. It's not going to feel particularly warm because we've got this cool and blustery northwesterly breeze, most notable across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. That's where the bulk of the showers will be moving in. Some of these showers will be lively with perhaps some hail and thunder in the far northwest, where it's going to be just 11 or 12 Celsius. In the south, mid to high teens, and where we get some sunshine and shelter from the winds, pleasant enough, but not particularly pleasant. Across Scotland, those showers will be moving in swiftly through the day. Cold enough for some snow to be falling from those showers above around 600 metres for the Scottish mountains. Now, for Northern Ireland, the showers will be on and off through the day, interspersed by brighter spells, some heavy rain appearing for Cumbria and Lancashire at times. But for parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, fewer showers, a greater chance that we end the day with some blue skies, and we keep those clear skies into the evening and overnight. As a result, it's going to be a chilly night in many places. Temperatures dipping into the mid to low single figures, but there'll still be some showers. There'll still be a gusty wind coming through across northwestern parts of the country, and that will continue to drive showers into the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales first thing Thursday. Thursday is a similar day to Wednesday, so if you've got the frequent showers on Wednesday, expect more of the same on Thursday. Likewise, if you've got mostly dry, fine conditions on Wednesday, similar on Thursday. Wouldn't rule out the odd shower in the south, but that's where the best of the sunshine and the highest temperatures will be 16 to 17 Celsius, mid to low teens further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Lanarkshire, the A749 is closed each way along Stonelaw Road at Rutherglen, where lorries hit the railway bridge. In County Durham, the A66 is closed eastbound from the A67 at Bowes to Barnard Castle after an accident. East Yorkshire, the A614 is closed between Portington and Howden after an accident causing queues. The M66 in Greater Manchester is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 1 and 2 from Ramsbottom to Bury causing queues. On the M1 in Derbyshire, there are southbound queues from the Tibshelf services to junction 28 at Alfreton after an investigation. There are delays of up to an hour and a half, with some cancelled trains between Watford Junction and Euston Station in London after an investigation. The M3 in Surrey is blocked southbound after a vehicle caught fire between junctions 3 and 4 from Bagshot to Camberley causing queues. And that's the latest.